Before we get started, please like and subscribe. Let me know where you're watching from, and you can support the channel by clicking thanks or joining. The rain had started before sunset, a slow, patient drizzle that crawled across the streets of Black Ridge and settled like a warning on every window. Ethan Cole sat alone in his small apartment on the 3rd floor, staring at the envelope that had been slipped under his door. He had not heard footsteps. He had not heard a knock. Only the soft whisper of paper brushing against the wooden floor had alerted him. And now that thin envelope sat before him like a quiet threat. His hands were trembling as he opened it. Ethan was not the kind of man who frightened easily. He had served in the military. He had been shot at twice. He had pulled 2 friends out of burning metal after an explosion in Kabul. He understood danger, but this envelope carried something entirely different. Something cold, something personal. Inside was a single sheet of white paper. Thick, heavy, expensive. Printed in perfectly aligned black ink were 10 names arranged in a vertical list without explanation or signature. And at the very top, first name number 1 was Ethan Cole. He read it again, hoping it would somehow make more sense. But the letters stayed the same. The list of people who will die tonight. It had no title, but Ethan felt the meaning as sharply as if someone had carved the words into his skin. The next name was Lila Morgan, a woman he barely knew but recognized from the grocery store across the street. The third name was Victor Hale, a retired firefighter who lived 2 blocks over. Ethan read all 10 names again and again, but nothing changed. The list remained silent, unhelpful, and deadly. Lightning flashed through the window, casting the room in a stark white glare. The reflection of his own face stared back at him, pale and strained. Ethan took a deep breath, but it shuddered in his chest. His instincts forced his body to move. He grabbed his phone and dialed 911. The line clicked, but no operator answered. Instead, a flat voice repeated, "There is no help tonight." He hung up, tried again. Same message. His pulse hammered against his ribs. He paced across the room, looking for something, anything that would ground him. His training told him to analyze, identify threats, create action plans. But the threat here was unknown, invisible. It had already reached inside his home and delivered a death sentence with the quiet confidence of someone certain they would not fail. A heavy thud vibrated through the hallway outside. Ethan froze. Another thud, then another, slow, deliberate, like someone dragging something heavy along the floor. He moved toward the door but did not open it. Instead, he put his ear against the cool surface. The sound was not footsteps. It was more like the scrape of something sharp grinding along the ground. A tool, a weapon, or something worse. Ethan stepped back and scanned his apartment. He knew he could not stay here. The list warned him. The phone line warned him. The hallway warned him. Whatever force had chosen him tonight was already closing in. He stuffed the paper into his jacket pocket, grabbed his keys, and moved toward the window that opened to the fire escape. Rain blew into the room as he pushed it up. Cold, bitter, but far safer than the hallway. Before climbing out, he looked one last time around the apartment. Everything was quiet. too quiet. Then, as if answering his thoughts, every light in the room flickered and went dark, plunging the apartment into soft blue gloom, lit only by distant lightning. For one breath, everything remained still. Then he heard it, a voice whispering from the far corner of the room, low, raspy, speaking his name. Ethan. He did not turn to look. He launched himself through the window onto the fire escape, gripping the wet metal bars as the wind whipped around him. Below, the street was nearly empty, only the rain and the occasional flash of car headlights. He began climbing down, but halfway to the ground he felt the metal vibrate. Something had stepped onto the platform above him. Ethan kept moving, trying not to slip. The vibration grew stronger. Whatever was above him was heavy and wrong. It did not walk. It shifted its weight in unnatural movements, like a distorted rhythm. Ethan reached the bottom and jumped into a puddle, splashing water onto his jeans. He sprinted toward the alley, but as he reached it, he heard the sound again overhead. That dragging metal scrape, this time louder, echoing through the street. He ducked behind a dumpster, forcing his breathing to slow. Lightning cut across the sky, and for one brief second he saw a silhouette on the fire escape. Tall, angular, its limbs bent in impossible angles like broken branches held together by tendons of shadow. It lifted something long and sharp, dragging it against the railing, producing a scream of metal that made Ethan press his hands to his ears. The figure leaned forward, scanning the street. Its head twitched in small jerks as if tasting the air. Ethan felt it searching for him through the darkness, through the storm, through the way the night hung heavy around him. He pressed himself deeper into the shadows and waited. After a long, breathless minute, the creature turned and climbed upward, disappearing into the darkness above. Ethan did not wait. He ran from the alley, his shoes splashing through streams of rainwater. He had to reach Lila Morgan. If the list was real, if it was a countdown, then others were in danger too. And maybe, just maybe, if he could warn them, they could piece together why their names had been chosen. But another thought cut through him with surgical precision. The thing on the fire escape had called his name without seeing him. It had known exactly who he was, where he lived, and how to find him. The list was not a threat. It was a schedule, and Ethan Cole was scheduled to die tonight. Ethan moved through the rain-soaked streets with a restless urgency that twisted inside his chest like a tightening wire. The storm hammered the pavement and shattered every sound into noise. Yet he could still hear the memory of the creature scraping its blade across the fire escape. That metallic scream lived in his bones now, a reminder that whatever hunted him tonight would not stop, and it would not limit itself to him alone. The list in his pocket proved that 10 names, 10 targets, 10 deaths scheduled for the same night. He turned the corner onto Willow Lane, where Lila Morgan's apartment stood at the end of the block above a quiet grocery store. Ethan had seen her many times, but had never spoken more than a polite hello. She seemed gentle, soft-spoken, the kind who smiled even when tired. Now her life balanced on the thin edge of the list. Ethan pushed forward, ignoring the rain that clung to his face and soaked through his shirt. The street was dark. The power outage had spread further than he expected. The only light came from the occasional flash of lightning and the glow of a distant traffic signal that flickered as if struggling for life. Ethan reached the door to the stairwell and pushed inside. The hallway was narrow, the walls lined with old wood panels that had warped over time. Water dripped from a leaking pipe, tapping a slow rhythm on the floor. Ethan climbed the stairs 2 at a time. Halfway up, he paused, listening. A faint tapping noise echoed above him. At first, he thought it was more dripping water, but the rhythm changed. It was deliberate, slow, almost like knuckles brushing lightly along the wall. His breath tightened. The sound grew louder, then stopped. The silence pressed against him with unnatural weight. He reached Lila Morgan's door and knocked softly. No response. He knocked again, louder. Still nothing. He placed his hand on the knob. It turned easily, unlocked. He pushed the door open and stepped into the dark apartment. The smell hit him first. Damp fabric, cold air, and something else underneath it. The metallic bite of fear. The lights were out, but lightning from the window flashed across the room, revealing scattered belongings on the floor. A chair knocked over. A bag spilled open. A scarf twisted like someone had grabbed it in a hurry. Ethan called her name, but his voice cracked in the darkness. He moved carefully, scanning the room. At the edge of the couch, he found a broken phone screen. He lifted it. The device had been crushed as if by an enormous weight. Another flash of lightning lit the far hallway leading to the bedroom. The door was slightly open. Ethan pushed it gently, and the room filled with the soft glow of the storm outside. Lila was there, alive, sitting on the floor with her knees drawn to her chest, trembling uncontrollably. Her eyes darted to Ethan and widened with terror. "Do not come closer," she whispered, her voice shaking. "It knows your name too." Ethan knelt a few feet away, keeping his movements calm. "You got the list," he said. She nodded, then pointed to a crumpled piece of paper near her bed. The same heavy white paper, the same printed text. Her name was second. She had read it an hour ago and heard something moving in the ceiling minutes later. "I saw it," she choked out. It crawled above the roof like a giant insect, dragging itself toward my door. I thought it was inside the walls. I thought it would break through. Ethan listened, forcing his mind to stay steady. The creature tracked names with impossible precision. It hunted by intention, not by chance. It was following the order of the list exactly. That meant Lila was next. If it had not taken her already, it was only because Ethan had distracted it by escaping. The thought offered no comfort. If anything, it made the truth sharper. They were running out of time. "We need to move," he said. "Now!" He helped her stand, but she flinched at every sound. They stepped back into the living room. Ethan scanned the shadows. Every corner looked alive. Every shift of darkness felt like something watching them. He led Lila toward the door but froze inches before opening it. A faint scraping sound drifted from the hallway, slow, deliberate, and cruelly patient. Lila covered her mouth, her breathing ragged. Ethan pressed his back against the wall, gripping the handle of a kitchen knife he had grabbed from her counter. The scraping grew louder. It was approaching the door. Lightning flashed outside, and through the narrow gap under the door, they saw a shadow pass. Long, distorted, as if stretched by invisible hands. The shadow paused, Ethan held his breath. Lila trembled beside him, tears gathering in her eyes. The creature leaned closer. They could hear a low sound like wet fabric tearing slowly. Then a soft, raspy whisper seeped through the door, calling Lila's name with a drawn-out hunger that made her knees buckle. Ethan pulled her away from the door. He scanned the room desperately, the fire escape window, their only chance. He guided her quickly, lifting the frame. The wind roared in pushing cold rain into the apartment. Lila climbed out first, gripping the metal railing. Ethan followed, pulling the window closed behind them. Just as the doorknob inside began to twist, they moved down the fire escape, but halfway to the ground, the metal shook violently. Something had stepped onto the platform above. Lila gasped and clung to the railing. Ethan put his arm around her, steadying her. The creature shifted its weight, a rhythmic, unnatural motion that vibrated through the entire structure. "Keep going," Ethan whispered. "Do not look up." They climbed to the lowest platform and leapt into the alley. Lila stumbled, but Ethan caught her. Behind them, the creature descended the metal stairs, scraping its blade along the rails, producing a slow scream of metal that filled the night air. Ethan pulled Lila into a narrow gap between two buildings where shadows wrapped around them like a cloak. For a moment, the creature stood at the mouth of the alley, its tall, bent form twitching as it tasted the air, searching for their scent. Ethan pressed Lila behind him, shielding her. Rain crashed against the pavement, masking their breathing. The monster leaned forward, twisting its limbs in a way that defied all logic. It listened. It waited. Then lightning flashed again. A distant siren wailed somewhere far across the city. The creature turned slowly, withdrew the blade, then climbed the building wall with inhuman precision, vanishing into the storm. Ethan exhaled shakily. Lila clung to him, sobbing quietly. They were alive, but victory felt thin. The list was still in effect. 8 more names, and whatever stalked them tonight was only just beginning. "We need to find the others," Ethan said, his voice steady, despite the fear clawing inside him. "We need to warn them before the list continues. We cannot outrun this alone." Lila nodded and wiped her tears, her resolve strengthened by the reality of survival. Together they stepped out of the shadows and moved into the storm toward their uncertain night. The list waited, and death was keeping count. The storm refused to weaken. The wind slashed across the streets as if the entire city were being scraped open by invisible claws. Ethan and Lila moved quickly through the darkness, keeping close to the abandoned buildings, where shadows clung together and muffled their presence. The next name on the list pulsed in Ethan's mind with relentless pressure. Victor Hale, a retired firefighter, known in Black Ridge as steady, reliable, unshakable, even after decades of danger. If anyone could survive a night like this, maybe it was him. But Ethan did not have the luxury of hope. He only had urgency. Lightning spilled across the rooftops as they approached the old brick apartment complex where Victor lived. The structure stood larger than most of the aging buildings in the neighborhood, but all its windows were dark. The outage had swallowed the entire block. Lila stayed close, her breath trembling in the cold rain. She clutched the list she had found at her apartment, holding it like a fragile truth too heavy to drop. "Do you think he already knows?" she asked, her voice unsteady. "If he got a list the way we did, then yes," Ethan replied. "But that does not mean he believes it yet." They reached the entrance. The front door hung slightly open, not forced, but carelessly left ajar. Lila stiffened. Ethan placed a steadying hand on her shoulder before pushing the door inward. The faint smell of wet ashes drifted through the corridor, mixed with the heavy staleness of a building long overdue for maintenance. Water dripped from the ceiling, forming uneven puddles that reflected scraps of weak lightning from outside. Ethan moved first, scanning every shadow, every corner. Lila followed, gripping his sleeve, as though his presence were the only solid thing left in the world. The hallway curved to the right, where the stairwell came into view, and there, sitting on the second step, was Victor Hale. At least it looked like him. He was alive, breathing, his chest rising and falling in sharp, uneven bursts. But his face was ghost white, strained by something deeper than fear. His hands shook violently as he held a crumpled sheet of paper soaked from rain. The list! His name was third. He looked up as Ethan approached, eyes widening with a mix of recognition and dread. "You got one too," he whispered. Ethan nodded. Lila stepped forward softly. Victor swallowed hard before continuing. "It came an hour ago. I thought someone was playing a prank. Then the lights went out. Then I heard something on the roof, a scraping sound like metal and bone grinding together. I went to check the generator room and found the ceiling torn open like something had punched through from above." Ethan felt a chill slide along his spine. The creature was circling faster than he expected, targeting each name with terrifying precision. If it had reached Victor first, it could reach them again. "We cannot stay here," Ethan said. "We have to move, all of us." Victor started to rise, but froze halfway, pressing a hand against his side. Ethan caught him quickly, noticing the smear of dried blood across the firefighter's ribcage. Lila gasped, "Are you hurt?" "It swiped at me," Victor muttered. "I did not see it clearly, just the shadow and the blade. I barely escaped down the stairwell. It did not chase me. I think it wanted me to run." Ethan exchanged a troubled glance with Lila. The creature was not acting out of instinct. It was following a plan, a sequence, the order of the list. Victor was third. They had arrived just in time. But that did not guarantee safety. "Help me get him up," Ethan said. They lifted Victor carefully, guiding him to his feet. He winced but nodded for them to continue. Together they moved toward the exit. Thunder rolled overhead, thick, heavy, and strangely close. The building groaned under the wind, but then another sound threaded through the noise, something sharper, a clicking rhythm like claws tapping against metal beams. "It is here," Lila whispered. They reached the lobby, but the lights flickered violently, stuttering like a dying heartbeat. Ethan scanned the ceiling. The shadows seemed to twist unnaturally, as if responding to an unseen command. Then the floor vibrated beneath their feet. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Victor stiffened. "It is above us." The ceiling bulged downward for a moment, as if something enormous pressed against it from the other side. Then the bulge vanished, replaced by silence. Ethan tightened his grip on the knife he still carried from Lila's apartment, though he knew it was useless. Still, he held it to keep his shaking hands steady. "Move," he said quietly but urgently. They pushed through the lobby doors into the storm. The streets were nearly empty, washed clean by rivers of rain, but the rooftops above them shifted with movement, a shadow leaping silently from one building to the next. Victor looked up, eyes narrowing. "It tracks us from above." "We keep moving," Ethan said. "We do not stop no matter what." Lightning cracked the sky. A massive silhouette crouched on a rooftop 30 feet away. Its long limbs bent in jagged angles, its head cocked at an unnatural tilt, as if studying them from afar. Lila whimpered. Victor steadied his breath. Ethan pulled them both forward. The creature moved too, slipping down the building face with sickening ease, its fingers and limbs gripping the wall like a spider. Every motion was smooth and deliberate, as though gravity did not matter to it at all. When it reached the second floor, it paused, pressing a long blade against the glass window. The blade carved a slow arc, producing a scream of shattered sound that rose above the storm and tore through their nerves. "Run!" Ethan shouted. They sprinted across the street, the water splashing upward with each step. Victor limped but pushed himself harder, his breath ragged. The creature dropped from the wall, landing with sudden brutal force that cracked the pavement beneath it. It straightened slowly, its full height towering over them. Even through the storm, its body looked wrong, a dark, shifting texture like smoke trying to imitate flesh. It stepped forward, its blade dragging behind it, making a long, curved cut in the concrete. Ethan pulled Lila toward a narrow maintenance alley, while Victor followed, stumbling. The alley bent into a sharp corner, where an emergency metal door stood partially rusted but unlocked. Ethan pushed it open and ushered them inside. The door slammed behind them, and the interior swallowed their presence in pitch-black silence. Only their shallow breaths filled the space. Victor leaned against the wall, shutting his eyes. "If that thing wanted me dead," he muttered, "it could have done it hours ago." "It is following the list," Ethan said. "The order matters." "Why?" Lila whispered. Ethan shook his head, but he felt the truth forming somewhere deep inside a place he did not want to acknowledge yet. Someone made the list, someone who understood them, someone who wanted them to suffer in sequence, not in chaos. A distant echo drifted through the metal door, a low voice calling Victor's name, drawn out, taunting. The firefighter stiffened, but Ethan placed a steady hand on his arm. "As long as we stay together," Ethan said, "it cannot pick us off one by one." But even as he spoke, the truth gnawed at him. The list carried 10 names for a reason, and the night was still young. The emergency shelter they had slipped into was no more than a maintenance tunnel carved beneath the oldest section of Black Ridge. The concrete walls sweated with moisture, the air cold enough to sting their lungs with each breath. Ethan kept one hand on the metal door, listening for the creature outside. Every few seconds, a faint scrape echoed through the storm, like the sound of a blade brushing stone. It was not approaching, not retreating. It was waiting. Lila sank slowly to the floor, trembling as the adrenaline drained out of her. Victor leaned heavily against the wall, pressing a palm over his injured ribs. He whispered, "I can still move. Just give me a minute." Ethan looked at both of them, their faces pale and strained, lit only by the soft pulse of lightning spilling under the door. Their survival depended on movement, but moving blindly would only lead them into the creature's path. The list was still warm in his pocket and pressing into him like a heartbeat. The fourth name, the next target, someone out there, was moments away from being hunted. "We need to find the next person," Ethan said, forcing calm into his voice. "We need to stay ahead of it, or at least keep its focus on us." Victor exhaled a shaky breath. "You think that thing cares about obstacles? It cares about order," Ethan replied. "The list is more than a warning. It's controlling it." Lila looked up, eyes wide. "Controlling?" Ethan nodded. "It will not break sequence. It killed no one before reaching you or Victor. It chased me first, then you, then him. It could have taken any of us at any time, but it chooses to match the list exactly. Someone designed this." Victor clenched his jaw. "Then we find whoever is next and get them out." Lightning cracked again, illuminating a small scrap of paper on the ground near an old fuse box. Ethan picked it up, frowning. It was the same thick paper as the lists, but blank. No names, no markings. He turned it over, noticing faint indentations like pressure marks. Something had pressed against this sheet. Hard. "We're not the only ones who have been down here," he muttered. The thought unsettled him. Someone had come through this tunnel recently carrying the same paper. The architect of the list, or someone connected to them. Before he could think further, a violent clang shook the metal door. Lila screamed. Victor tensed painfully. Ethan held up a hand. "Do not move." Another clang, slower this time. The creature was dragging something across the outside of the door. The metal shuddered under the force. Victor whispered, "If it gets in here, we won't have room to run." "It won't come in," Ethan replied, though he had no idea if that was true. The creature followed patterns. The list told it who, but something else determined where and when. That sequence might be predictable, or it might be worse than anything he imagined. The scraping stopped. The storm outside swallowed the silence. After several long breaths, Ethan eased away from the door. "We move now." Quietly, they descended deeper into the tunnel, the air growing colder and the darkness thickening into something almost physical. Ethan's phone was dead, along with every device they had touched since receiving the lists. But the path ahead appeared faintly lit by emergency markers that glowed with dim orange light. A junction opened ahead, splitting into 3 directions. Etched into the concrete above the left tunnel was a name written in black marker. Ethan froze. The handwriting was rough, uneven, like someone had written it while shaking. The name was Claire Rowan. Lila covered her mouth. "Claire is the 4th name." Ethan felt a ripple of dread. Whoever created the list had been here recently, leaving a marker to guide them or manipulate them. Either way, Claire Rowan was nearby and in danger. They followed the left tunnel, the air growing colder with each step. The emergency lights flickered, casting jagged shadows that danced along the walls like restless spirits. Victor breathed heavily behind them, but powered through the pain with sheer will. After several minutes, a faint light appeared ahead, a small underground utility station with a single desk, a dusty generator, and a young woman curled in the corner, her arms wrapped around her legs. Her eyes snapped open at their approach, terrified but alert. "Stay back," she cried. "I know what's out there. I heard it. I saw it through the vents." Ethan raised his hands. "Claire Rowan, we saw your name on the list. We're here to get you out." Claire stared at him, uncertain, then nodded. She held up a crumpled sheet identical to theirs. The list had arrived under the door of her studio apartment an hour earlier. She had run immediately, driven by pure instinct. Something had chased her across the old district rooftops until the power outage struck. She slipped through an open manhole cover, hoping the tunnels would hide her. "It followed me," Claire whispered, choking on the words. "It scraped along the walls above me. It knows exactly where I am." Ethan felt the temperature drop suddenly. The hair on the back of his neck lifted. Lila stepped closer, her voice trembling. "We have to move now. It tracked us all night. It won't stop." Victor nodded grimly. "The longer we stay, the smaller this tunnel gets." But just as they turned to leave, a low groaning sound vibrated through the concrete. Dust rained from the ceiling. Pipes creaked as though something immense pressed against them from above. Claire gasped, "It's here." Ethan drew them into a tight formation, scanning the ceiling. A long crack appeared overhead, splitting slowly like a mouth opening in the stone. Something pressed through, dark, misshapen. Its shadow spilled across the room before the creature fully arrived. Its limbs slithered unnaturally, gripping the edges of the crack. Its head tilted downward, searching for its target, searching for Claire. "Move!" Ethan yelled, pushing Claire toward the exit. The creature dropped halfway into the chamber, its blade scraping sparks from the concrete. The sound echoed violently through the tunnel, intensifying the panic in their chests. Victor grabbed Claire's arm, pulling her forward, despite the pain in his ribs. Lila stumbled, but Ethan steadied her. The tunnel shook as the creature lunged downward, ripping concrete loose. They sprinted through the passage as debris exploded around them. Claire screamed as a piece of shattered pipe sliced across her leg. But Victor yanked her forward, refusing to let her fall. Behind them, the creature squeezed into the tunnel, its limbs bending at grotesque angles. Its blade dragged behind it, throwing sparks in a hypnotic, deadly trail. The sound was deafening, a mechanical shriek that felt alive. Ethan pushed the group faster. A ladder appeared on their right, leading up to a rusted maintenance grate. He shoved it open, rainwater crashing into the tunnel. "Go now," he shouted, pushing Claire up first, then Lila, then Victor. The creature surged forward, its blade inches from reaching Victor's foot. Ethan grabbed Victor's arm, hauling him up the last rungs. The creature snapped upward, venting a guttural roar that vibrated the ladder like a living pulse. Ethan slammed the grate shut just as the blade struck it. Sparks burst outward. The creature hammered the metal, but the structure held for now. The four of them collapsed onto the flooded street, gasping for air as rain poured over their faces. The city was darker than before, the storm heavier, as if the night itself fought against their lungs. Claire hugged herself, shaking violently. "You found me," she whispered. "You actually found me." Ethan nodded, but his mind raced. 4 names down, 6 left, and the creature was learning. Each encounter had grown faster, more aggressive. Whatever controlled it was tightening the leash, and Ethan had the sickening feeling that by gathering together, they were falling into exactly the pattern the list's creator intended. Rain hammered the streets with relentless force as Ethan, Lila, Victor, and Claire staggered away from the maintenance grate that had nearly become their tomb. The storm howled through Black Ridge like a living thing, pushing against them, swallowing their breath, numbing their skin. The 4 of them moved through the darkness because stopping meant death. They had seen enough to know that the creature would not relent. Not tonight, not until the list was complete. Ethan kept one hand on Claire's arm as they pushed forward. She struggled with every step, her injured leg sending tremors of pain through her body. Victor walked on her opposite side, supporting her weight despite the strain his own wound inflicted on him. Lila stayed close behind them, gripping her soaked jacket tightly as if it were the only anchor she had left. Ethan scanned the shadows along the rooftops, expecting at any moment to see the distorted silhouette of their hunter slipping through the storm. The 5th name on the list pressed into his thoughts like a warning. Daniel Price. He did not know the man personally, but he recognized the name from the neighborhood. A quiet mechanic who worked late nights in a small garage on the east side. A man who lived alone and rarely spoke more than a sentence at a time. Someone who would not know he was next until it was too late. We need to reach Daniel before it does. Ethan said, his voice steady, though exhaustion pulled at him. "How far is it?" Lila asked, her voice trembling. "Across the industrial district," Ethan replied. "If the roads are blocked, we take the alleys. We cannot risk the creature cutting us off." Victor grunted. "It already knows where we are." Then we move faster. They turned the corner onto Pinehurst Avenue, a long street lined with abandoned warehouses and shuttered storefronts. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating their path in bright white bursts. The storm had weakened the city's infrastructure. Broken power lines lay across the pavement like dead serpents. Water pooled in every dip, reflecting the distorted shapes of the buildings around them. Then Ethan saw it, a figure standing at the far end of the road. Tall, still, watching. His heart seized. The silhouette did not move. It stood in the center of the street with impossible calm while the storm raged around it. Lightning granted them only a fraction of a second to see the creature's twisted shape. but the image carved itself into their minds. Long limbs bent like jagged spears, a head tilted too far to one side, and a blade dragging along the ground even while it stood motionless. Claire whimpered. "It found us again." Ethan forced them toward an alley on the left, hoping the monster would track them slower in tight spaces. But as they entered the alley, a deep grinding sound echoed behind them, the blade lifting and dragging across stone with deliberate hunger. "Move," Ethan hissed. They sprinted through the alley, dodging overflowing dumpsters and debris. Water splashed against their legs, soaking them further. Ethan kept his focus straight ahead, refusing to look back even when he heard the creature shifting into the alley behind them. It moved with unnatural speed, the sound of its limbs scraping against the brick walls, following them like a whisper. At the far end of the alley, a chain-link fence blocked their path. Rusted, tall, not impossible, but slow. Too slow. Victor reached it first and began climbing despite his injury. Claire followed shakily, her breath cutting through the air in frantic gasps. Lila climbed too, fingers slipping on the wet metal. Ethan waited until they reached the top before he jumped up. He pulled himself halfway onto the fence when the creature's blade sliced across the ground behind him, sending sparks into the rain. He pulled himself over as the fence shuddered violently from the creature's strike. He hit the ground running, pulling Lila with him while Victor helped Claire stay on her feet. The group raced across the industrial yards until Daniel Price's garage came into view. The garage was one of the few buildings still standing strong in this district. The lights were off like everywhere else, but a faint glow flickered from inside the workshop. Ethan reached the door and pounded on it. "Daniel, it's Ethan Cole. Open the door now." No response. He pounded again louder. "Daniel, it's urgent. You are in danger." Claire leaned against the wall, her breath wavering. Ethan heard movement inside. A cautious shuffle. A click. Then the door opened a few inches, revealing a tired man with oil smeared across his hands and worry carved into his face. "Ethan," he said slowly, "why are you out in this storm?" Ethan pushed the door open. "No time to explain. Get inside and lock it. Now." Daniel stared at the group, but something in Ethan's face convinced him. He let them in and shut the door, securing multiple locks and sliding a heavy steel beam across the interior frame. The wind rattled the building, but inside the workshop, the air fell still enough for them to breathe. "What's going on?" Daniel asked. "Why do you all look like you ran through hell?" Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out the list. Daniel's eyes widened as he saw his own name printed in stark black ink. "Someone left this for you," Ethan said. "They want you dead. All of us dead. And the thing hunting us follows the order exactly." Daniel took a shaky breath. "I heard something on the roof earlier. Thought it was debris, but then it dragged across the whole length of the building. It's here," Claire whispered. The workshop lights flickered as if answering her. Ethan scanned the room. There were tools everywhere, shelves of equipment, heavy machinery, enough metal to slow the creature down or distract it, but nothing capable of stopping it. They could only delay it long enough to escape again. Daniel turned toward the back door. "There's a service tunnel that leads under the train tracks. It comes out near the old mill road." If we get through it, we can put some distance between us and whatever that thing is. A deafening crash shook the entire workshop. The roof buckled inward as the creature landed on top of it with brutal force. Dust rained from the ceiling. Metal beams groaned under the impact. "Move," Ethan ordered. "Now!" The creature's blade pierced through the roof, slicing downward in a long, clean arc. The group scattered as sparks rained across the workshop floor. Daniel grabbed a heavy wrench and pointed to the back exit. This way. They sprinted through the workshop, weaving between machinery. The creature tore another hole through the ceiling, its limbs sliding through the opening. Its head jerked unnaturally, scanning the room with that horrific predator stillness. The back door burst open as Daniel led them into the service tunnel. Ethan pulled Claire forward while Lila held her injured arm tightly. Victor staggered but kept pace. Behind them, the creature dropped fully into the workshop, landing with a thunderous crash that shook the tunnel entrance. Daniel slammed the tunnel door shut just as the blade sliced through the metal. Sparks exploded across the ground. The creature bellowed a sound so cold and guttural it froze their blood. They ran. Water collected in the tunnel, forming shallow flooding. Their footsteps splashed loudly, echoing down the confined space. The lights overhead flickered in waves as if reacting to the monster's presence above. The tunnel trembled as the creature climbed along the outside walls, tracking their movement from above ground. Ethan felt it. The pattern, the intention, each attack more forceful than the last. The list was accelerating, the creature was adapting, and the night was running out of mercy. They reached the far end of the tunnel, where another stairway led upward. Daniel pushed the hatch open, letting cold rain spill onto them again. Above them, the city loomed darker than before. Behind them, the creature's blade struck the tunnel wall again, shaking the structure like a dying heartbeat. Daniel Price was still alive, but the night was far from finished. The hatch slammed shut behind them as the storm swallowed their breaths once more. Rain crashed against the pavement. The sky writhed with lightning that tore through the darkness like violent fractures. Ethan, Lila, Victor, Claire, and Daniel emerged from the tunnel soaked and shaking, their lungs desperate for air. The creature's last strike still echoed through the underground passage, vibrating through their bones. Daniel leaned against the nearest wall, gripping his wrench with white knuckles. Claire clutched her injured leg. Trembling, Victor steadied her while trying to hide the pain radiating through his ribs. Lila hovered near Ethan, her eyes darting across the rooftops. None of them dared to speak for several seconds, afraid their voices might summon the monster again. Ethan looked down at the damp list in his hand. 5 names had been targeted. The 6th name waited like a closed door they had no choice but to open. The name was Evelyn Grant, a retired school teacher living near the north edge of Black Ridge. A woman Ethan had met twice, kind, quiet, gentle, someone who would never survive even a single second against the thing hunting them. "We need to get to Evelyn now," Ethan said. Claire shook her head. "How does it even know who these people are?" How does it find them? Ethan stared at the list. Because someone wants it to. Someone who knows this city. Someone who knows us. Someone who knows them. Victor breathed slowly, wincing. Whoever controls that thing. They want us afraid. They want us running. They want us together. Daniel frowned. Why together? What does that give them? Ethan didn't answer. He didn't have an answer, but the weight of the truth pressed harder with each passing moment. The sequence mattered. The pattern mattered. They were being driven like cattle along a predetermined path. A distant metallic clang echoed across the industrial yard. Lila flinched. We need to move. Now they crossed into a narrow service road that wound between rows of silent factories. The storm made the world feel suspended, as if everything beyond their next footstep had been swallowed by rain. Ethan led them cautiously past a collapsed warehouse roof and around a bend where shattered glass littered the ground. Every sound around them felt amplified: the wind, the dripping gutters, the soft thud of their own footsteps. Ahead, the street opened into a wider commercial area, one that should have been filled with distant traffic and the glow of street lights. Instead, the blackout had transformed it into a dead and hollow void. Lightning flashed, revealing abandoned vehicles, overturned trash bins, and a row of storefronts with windows blown out from the pressure of the storm. Claire shuddered. This place looks like it died before we got here. Victor exhaled heavily. Maybe everything did. They pushed forward until the buildings shifted to residential streets. Weaker signs of life clung to the dark windows, curtains shifting, faint glimmers from emergency candles, shadows moving behind doors. The storm had pushed the city into hiding. Evelyn Grant's home sat at the corner of Ashford Lane, a small, single-story house with a front porch and two windows that reflected the storm like trembling eyes. Ethan signaled the group to stop and scan the surrounding area. Nothing moved, but that meant nothing. The creature could be above them, below them, or behind the next blink. He approached the door and knocked firmly. Evelyn, it's Ethan Cole. I need you to open the door. No answer. He knocked louder. Evelyn, this is urgent. Please open up. Still no answer. Ethan reached for the doorknob. Locked. Victor stepped beside him. She could be hiding, or worse. Daniel pointed toward the side of the house. A soft glow flickered through a back window. Someone was awake. Someone was moving. They circled carefully and peered through the glass. Evelyn sat in an armchair, clutching a blanket. A lantern illuminated her face, pale and strained. She was staring at something in her trembling hands. Her list. Ethan tapped gently on the window. Evelyn startled, nearly dropping the paper. She turned and saw them, confusion breaking across her features before fear returned. She stood shakily and unlocked the back door. Ethan stepped in first. Evelyn, what happened? Why are you all? Ethan held up his hands. No time. You're next on the list. We need to get you somewhere safe. Terror drained the color from her face. I heard it, she whispered. Something scraping across the roof. I thought it was debris. Lila shook her head. It's hunting you. A sudden groan rolled across the ceiling. Heavy, slow, precise, Evelyn whimpered. It's here. The ceiling sagged as something pressed against it. Dust drifted downward in thin streams. Victor grabbed Evelyn's arm. Everyone moved to the hallway. Central walls are stronger. They rushed into the narrow hallway just as the ceiling above the living room cracked open like splitting bone. A dark limb pierced through, followed by another. The creature slithered downward, twisting its body unnaturally to fit through the narrow gap. Its blade screeched against a ceiling beam, carving into the wood with a sound that tore at their nerves. Ethan pulled Evelyn behind him. Victor braced himself despite the agony twisting through his ribs. Daniel raised his wrench, though he knew it was little more than an act of defiance. The creature's head tilted through the opening, eyes glowing faintly like drowned embers. It scanned the room, locating Evelyn instantly. Its blade lifted slowly. "Run!" Ethan shouted. They burst from the hallway into the kitchen. The back door was their only hope. Daniel kicked it open. Evelyn stumbled, but Claire grabbed her arm and dragged her forward. The creature crashed through the ceiling and into the living room behind them, landing with a sickening thud that shook the entire house. They spilled into the yard. Rain hit them like a wall. Ethan pulled Evelyn close and helped her run across the flooded grass. The creature lunged out of the house behind them, its limbs spreading across the ground like shattered branches. It lifted itself and slid forward with violent intent. Victor spotted an old storm shelter hatch, half buried near the edge of the yard. There, he shouted. Ethan and Daniel pulled the hatch open while Claire and Lila pushed Evelyn toward it. The creature advanced quickly, its blade carving a deep trench through the mud. Its pace increased with every movement. "Hurry!" Ethan shouted. Evelyn descended the ladder first, followed by Claire and Lila. Victor went next, gritting through the pain. Daniel climbed in. Then Ethan followed last. Pulling the hatch shut, the blade struck it instantly. Sparks burst into the darkness below. Evelyn screamed as the entire shelter shuddered under the creature's attack. Another strike, then another. Metal groaned, bolts strained. "It's going to break through," Lila cried. "No," Ethan said breathlessly. "Not yet. It follows the list. It has to reach Evelyn. It cannot kill her through this hatch unless she's within reach." The creature hammered again, and the shelter dimmed as dust drifted from the ceiling. But the hatch held. For now, Victor breathed hard. "That thing is stronger every time we see it." Ethan nodded grimly. "And faster and closer." Claire leaned against the wall, tears forming in her eyes. "Why us? Why these names? Why this order?" The lantern flickered across Ethan's face, and for the first time that night, he felt the edges of the truth tightening around him like a vice. Because someone wants us to watch each death up close. Because someone wants us to run exactly where they expect. Because someone wants this night to end a very specific way. Evelyn trembled. Then what happens when it reaches the last name? Ethan looked at her, the answer forming like ice in his chest. "I think the last name is the one it wants most of all." The storm shelter shook with every impact as the creature hammered against the hatch above them. The lantern flickered violently, throwing jagged shadows shadows across the cramped metal walls. Ethan stood beneath the ladder staring upward, knowing the hatch would hold only because the creature followed the rules of the list. But rules had limits, and he feared they were approaching the moment when the creature no longer needed to obey anything at all. Victor sat against the wall, breathing hard, his injured ribs pulsing with every draw of air. Claire wiped mud from her face, her hands trembling uncontrollably. Daniel gripped the wrench across his lap, his jaw tight. Lila knelt beside Evelyn, whose thin shoulders shook with silent sobs. Ethan unfolded the damp list again. The rain had smeared the ink slightly, but the seventh name was still clear. Marcus Reed, a local journalist known for his investigative work, always digging into the city's darkest corners, exposing corruption, secrets, and hidden crimes. A man Ethan barely knew but recognized as relentless, unafraid of consequences, impossible to intimidate. If Marcus was next, then the pattern suggested something important. These were not random victims. This was targeted, calculated, and Marcus Reed might know why. Ethan stood. We need to go. Marcus is the seventh name. If the creature reaches him before we do, he dies. Evelyn shook her head. That thing is right above us. We cannot go out there. We do not have a choice, Ethan replied. The storm shelter is not safe forever, and the longer we stay, the more time the creature has to track us together. Victor narrowed his eyes. You keep saying that. Together. Why does that matter? Because someone wants us grouped, Ethan said quietly. Someone wants us moving in a path they can predict. Every name forces us in a specific direction. It's not just hunting, it's herding. Lila shivered. Herding us where? Ethan didn't answer. Because admitting the possibility meant acknowledging a design behind all this horror. A final metallic strike shook the hatch, then silence. The creature had moved on. Ethan waited 5 slow breaths, then opened the hatch just an inch. Rain spilled in. The night air was cold enough to sting. No shadow crossed the yard. No twisted shape perched on the roof. He pushed the hatch fully open. Go now! Quietly, they climbed out one by one, the storm washing mud and fear from their clothes. Ethan scanned the rooftops. Nothing but emptiness was the most dangerous sign. The creature was somewhere else, probably already moving toward Marcus Reed. We head north, Ethan said. Marcus lives near the river. If we cut across Norwood Street, we can get there faster. They moved quickly along the dark residential road until the houses gave way to older blocks where brick walls gleamed under the rain. Marcus Reed's apartment building stood at the top of a small hill overlooking the river, a worn 3-story structure with broken shutters and peeling paint. A light flickered through the 3rd-floor window. He's home, Daniel said. Ethan nodded. Or he thinks he's alone. As they approached the building, something felt wrong. A deep tension hung in the air. The street was empty, the wind quieter here, as if the storm avoided this block. Lila's breath caught. Do you feel that? She whispered. Yes, Ethan replied. It's waiting for us. They reached the front door. It was ajar, swinging in the storm like a slow heartbeat. Ethan pushed it open, revealing a narrow hallway lined with old wallpaper peeling in strips. Water dripped through cracks above. A set of stairs led upward into a deeper darkness. Marcus, Ethan called. A muffled voice answered from above. "I'm here. Hold on." Relief swept through the group until Victor froze. "He's not afraid," Victor whispered. "He sounds calm." Ethan felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. Because Marcus expected them. Because Marcus knew they were coming. Footsteps descended the stairs. Marcus Reed emerged, holding a lantern in one hand and a thick folder of documents in the other. His face was tired but steady. He wasn't surprised to see them. Not at all. "You made it," Marcus said. "Good. We don't have much time." Ethan stared at him. "You knew we were coming." "Of course," Marcus replied. "I've been following the pattern for weeks. You think you're the only ones who received a list?" He opened the folder, revealing copies of dozens of lists, different names, different orders, some crossed out, some incomplete. Evelyn gasped. "How many?" 37, Marcus said. "That's how many lists I have found so far. All given to different people, all leading them down different paths, all ending the same way." Ethan stepped closer. "What way?" Marcus's eyes darkened. "The last name always dies, and when they do, the creature resets. A new list begins, a new path forms. It's a cycle, a ritual, a test." Lila shook her head. "Who created it?" Marcus gave a hollow laugh. "That's the part I haven't solved yet. But I know one thing. The lists are not random. They are selected, crafted, and every person chosen is connected to someone else. You can't see the web yet, but it's there." Daniel frowned. "Why are you the 7th name this time?" "Because I got too close," Marcus replied. "I'm not supposed to know what I know." The entire building shook abruptly. Dust rained from the ceiling. The creature had arrived. Marcus turned pale. "It found me faster than I thought." The lantern flickered violently. A heavy impact struck the roof. The monster was crawling above them. Ethan grabbed Marcus's arm. "We need to get out now." Marcus pulled away. "No, I'm not running anymore. I know how to slow it down. Follow me." He sprinted up the stairs. The group followed despite the danger. Lightning illuminated the hallway as the creature's shadow spread across the ceiling like ink. Marcus rushed into his apartment. Papers were scattered everywhere. Strings tied between walls connected dozens of photos' names, addresses, dates, patterns, a massive web of truth. Marcus pointed to a trapdoor in the ceiling. "Up there, it leads to the rooftop bridge." A violent crash interrupted him. The creature burst through the far wall, twisting its limbs into the room. Its blade dragged along the floor, carving sparks that raced like fireflies across the shadows. Lila screamed. Claire pulled her aside. Ethan grabbed Marcus and shoved him toward the ladder. "Go now." Victor swung his arm despite the pain and knocked over a metal shelving unit, slowing the creature by seconds. But seconds mattered. The monster roared, its voice a cold, mechanical echo. Marcus climbed into the trapdoor first. Ethan pushed Lila up next, then Claire and Evelyn. Daniel followed. Victor climbed with a stagger, barely hanging on. Ethan climbed last as the creature surged forward. Its blade sliced across the ladder, leaving molten streaks. Ethan pulled himself through and slammed the trapdoor shut. They stood on the rooftop bridge, rain blasting their faces, the river roaring below. Marcus steadied himself. "There's something you need to know, something about the last name." But before he could speak, the trapdoor beneath them shook. The creature was climbing, and Ethan knew the night was accelerating fast toward a truth none of them were prepared to face. Rain pummeled the rooftop bridge as the group huddled close together, wind tearing at their soaked clothes, while thunder rolled across the river below them. Ethan held the trapdoor shut with both hands, feeling the metal pulse beneath his palms as the creature slammed against it from below. Each impact vibrated through the narrow walkway, threatening to tear the entire structure apart. Lila clung to the railing. Claire held Evelyn upright as she trembled in shock. Victor leaned heavily against Daniel, his breath ragged from pain. Marcus stood near Ethan, rain streaking down his face, his expression a mixture of fear and grim certainty. "It's climbing," Marcus said, voice barely audible over the storm. "It will break through in seconds." Ethan nodded, his jaw tight. "Move across the bridge. Now, if we hesitate even once, we die." The group moved quickly across the narrow metal walkway, suspended between two buildings, the river roaring violently beneath them. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the city in stark white bursts. The bridge rattled, the old bolts groaning under their weight. Halfway across, Marcus stopped. Ethan turned sharply. "Marcus, what are you doing?" "Keep moving." Marcus shook his head slowly. "You do not understand. The 8th name is mine." The words sliced through the rain. Evelyn gasped. Lila stepped back in shock. Daniel turned toward Marcus with disbelief, and Victor froze where he stood. Ethan stared at Marcus. "That makes no sense. The paper shows you as number 7. Marcus nodded grimly. "Yes, on your list, but there are different lists, different sequences. I have traced them, and on the version that matters, the one written by whoever created this, I am number 8. A roar erupted below them. The trapdoor ripped open with a violent clang as the creature's hand burst through, twisted fingers clawing at the air. Ethan pulled Marcus back. "Now is not the time. You will not die here." Marcus's eyes darkened. "That's the point. Ethan, I cannot outrun it anymore. It has followed me longer than it has followed any of you. I have been part of its cycle for months. I escaped too many times. Now the sequence has closed around me." Lightning flashed again. The creature's head emerged from the trapdoor, its limbs stretching across the metal walkway. The bridge swayed dangerously. "Move!" Ethan shouted. "Marcus, run!" But Marcus did not move. He stared at the creature with a strange calm. "You want the truth." Ethan, then hear it. The final name on every list is always the same. Ethan stepped closer. "Who, Marcus? Who is it?" Marcus opened his mouth, but the creature lunged forward, slamming onto the bridge. The impact shook the entire structure, sending Claire and Evelyn stumbling. Victor grabbed the railing, barely staying upright. Marcus was thrown backward, grabbing onto a loose cable to keep from falling into the river. The creature crawled toward him, blade scraping along the walkway. Every movement echoed like metal on bone. Ethan charged at Marcus, grabbing his arm. "You are not dying tonight." Marcus shook his head violently. "If I stay with you, you will all die. The bridge is not strong enough. It wants me. Ethan, let it take me, and the rest of you have a chance to reach the end of the path." Marcus read, "Stop," Ethan growled. The creature lunged. Marcus shoved Ethan away with sudden force, a final act of choice. Then he let go of the cable. He fell backward, dropping off the side of the bridge. The creature leapt after him without hesitation, diving into the roaring river below. The metal walkway shuddered violently from the sudden release of weight. Lila screamed. Evelyn collapsed to her knees. Daniel stood frozen, wrench trembling in his hand. Victor bowed his head, as if acknowledging a soldier lost on the battlefield. The river below raged violently, swallowing both Marcus and the creature. For a moment, the water glowed with faint light, an unnatural pulse, then darkened. Ethan stared into the river, breath shaking. He was supposed to tell us something critical. Claire wiped rain from her face, tears mixing with the storm. He said the last name is always the same. Ethan nodded slowly. The implications churned through his mind. If the last name repeats on every list, then the lists were not designed for one group at a time. They were designed for the final name, and everyone else was only a step along the way. Victor looked up from the railing. "Then who is last on our list?" Ethan unfolded the wet page again and stared at the final name. "His own, Ethan Cole." Lila gasped. No, this cannot be real." Daniel stepped backward in disbelief. "The creature is hunting in order. It gets stronger with each death." Marcus was 8. "That means 9 and 10 are..." Ethan closed his eyes. "I am last." The lightning lit the sky again. A massive splash erupted in the river as something broke the surface. The creature, it rose slowly from the churning water, its limbs twisting into new, elongated shapes as if it had absorbed the power of its latest kill. Its blade gleamed brighter, curved differently. An evolution born from death. Evelyn screamed. "It's stronger. It's changing." The creature climbed the riverbank with unnatural speed, water cascading from its distorted body. It scanned the bridge, eyes glowing like dying stars. It knew where Ethan was. Ethan's breath steadied, despite the fear clawing inside him. "If I am last, then that means someone else is 9th, someone still alive." Claire nodded. "We find them, whoever they are. We stop this cycle." Victor strained forward. "Then move. Now, before it climbs." The group burst into motion across the rest of the bridge as the creature began ascending the structure beneath them. Metal beams bent under its weight. Rain hammered the walkway as Ethan led them toward the next building. Mind racing, the list was not a hunt, it was a ritual, and his life was the final offering. But until the 9th name fell, he still had time. He still had a chance to fight, and the night was far from over. The rain fell harder than ever as Ethan and the others stumbled into the next building at the end of the rooftop bridge. The metal walkway behind them quaked with the weight of the creature climbing upward, its limbs scraping sharply against the steel. Thunder cracked through the sky like the city itself itself was splitting open. Ethan shoved the door shut and locked it, though he knew the creature's strength made the lock meaningless. It only bought them breaths, not minutes. Inside, the building was dark, abandoned, and hollow. Old factory equipment lined the walls, casting jagged silhouettes across the floor whenever lightning flashed. Leela pressed herself against the wall, gasping for breath. Claire and Evelyn held on to each other, the fear in their eyes illuminated by each pulse of white light. Victor rested against a rusted support beam, forcing steady breaths. Daniel checked the corridor with grim determination. Ethan took the list from his pocket. The paper was soaked, the ink distorted, but the 9th name was still visible. The creature had already crossed 8 names off its invisible ledger. The 9th name was all that stood between Ethan and the fate that awaited him. The name read Julian Cross. Ethan felt the weight of it settle in his chest. Julian Cross lived across town, far from this collapsing industrial district. He was a former paramedic, someone Ethan had worked with once on a charity rescue project. Julian was sharp, resourceful, and stubborn in the face of danger, but no amount of training could prepare him for the thing now hunting him. "We have to reach him," Ethan said. "The creature will go to him next, if it reaches him before we do." Lila swallowed hard. "Then you're next." Ethan nodded. "Yes, if Julian dies, I am the final name, and the creature will stop hiding. It will come for me directly." Victor stepped forward despite his injury. "Then we do not let that happen." But before they could move, a deep metallic groan echoed through the building. Something enormous had entered from the far side. A sharp scrape followed. The creature was already inside. Claire gasped. "How did it get ahead of us?" Ethan's blood went cold. It wasn't ahead. It was everywhere the list needed it to be. "Move," Ethan said sharply. "Back stairwell. Now!" They ran through the dim corridor, guided only by the intermittent lightning strikes filtering in through cracked windows. The building moaned as if it were alive, responding to the presence of the monster inside it. A heavy step landed behind them, then another. The creature shifted its limbs with unnatural speed. Daniel swung the door to the stairwell open. "Go!" They rushed downward, but the stairs were rusted and unstable. Victor's foot slipped, and he fell against the railing with a cry. Claire grabbed him before he tumbled over the edge. Ethan helped him stand as the creature's blade pierced through the wall above them, showering them with sparks and crumbling concrete. "Down," Ethan shouted. "Do not look back." They made it to the ground floor and burst out into the rain-soaked courtyard behind the building. The storm hid their movements, but also drowned their senses. They ran across the cracked pavement, heading toward the street that would lead them north toward Julian's neighborhood. Lightning illuminated the creature bursting through the building wall behind them. It landed like a collapsing tower, water splashing outward as its limbs bent into a new predatory stance. Its blade glowed faintly now, resonating with the storm as though it drew power from the night itself. "Run," Ethan ordered. They sprinted through the courtyard into the narrow alley beyond. Rain turned the pavement into a river. Dark water pooled around their feet. Ethan led them around a corner where a small underpass connected two districts. Halfway through the tunnel, a voice echoed from the other end. "Ethan, is that you?" Julian Cross stood beneath the flickering tunnel light, drenched but alive. His paramedic jacket clung to him, his breath visible in the cold air. Ethan felt relief surge through him. "Julian, you need to come with us now." But Julian didn't move, his eyes fixed on the group, then past them. His expression shifted from confusion to horror. "Is that what's been following you?" The creature emerged behind them at the entrance of the underpass, its silhouette outlined by lightning. The blade dragged along the ceiling, sending down showers of sparks. The monster crouched lower, preparing to strike. Julian's face twisted with determination. "Then move. Come on." They ran toward him as the creature lunged forward. Daniel grabbed Evelyn's arm, pulling her ahead. Claire stumbled, but Lila steadied her. Victor kept pace, despite each step sending pain shooting through him. The creature struck the ground behind them. The concrete cracked. Water exploded upward. Julian sprinted toward the opposite exit. Ethan stayed at the back of the group, watching the creature's movements, predicting its angle. Every encounter taught him more about its rhythm. If Ethan died, that rhythm ended. But if Julian died, the rhythm changed, and the creature would evolve again. "Keep going," Ethan shouted. "Do not stop no matter what." Lightning flashed, illuminating the far side of the tunnel, and two collapsed delivery trucks blocking the exit. A wall of metal barred their escape. Julian swore, "We're trapped unless we climb." They scrambled up the twisted metal. Claire reached the top first, pulling Evelyn behind her. Daniel climbed next. Victor struggled, but Julian hauled him up with surprising strength. The creature slammed into the trucks below, shaking the metal violently. Ethan climbed last. The monster's blade slashed upward, missing his leg by inches. He grabbed the edge. Julian pulled him up. They dropped to the other side of the trucks as the creature's shadow loomed in the gap above them. Julian panted, "Someone tell me what the hell that thing is." Ethan shook his head. "We do not know, but it kills according to a list, and you are next." Julian froze as the truth landed. "Me?" "Yes," Ethan said, "and if it kills you, then I am last." Julian stared at him. "Then what do we do?" The city stretched before them, dark, flooded, broken. The storm had swallowed the roads, transforming every route into a maze. Ethan looked north. "We keep moving. We stay ahead of it. We survive the night." Then the creature landed behind them. It had climbed the trucks. Julian grabbed Ethan's arm. "Go now." Everyone scattered across the flooded street. The creature chose a target instantly, Julian. It lunged with blinding speed, the blade carving a deep gash in the pavement where Julian had stood a second earlier. Julian rolled aside, soaked and shaking. Victor rushed forward with a shout despite his injury, swinging a broken pipe he had grabbed. The blow hit the creature's arm, but bounced off like metal striking stone. The creature turned toward Victor. Ethan tackled Victor out of the way as the blade carved a trench where his chest had been. Julian yelled, "Over here!" He drew the creature's attention by hurling a piece of debris at its head. The creature snapped toward him instantly, tracking the movement with surgical precision. Julian ran. The creature followed. Ethan ran after them both. Julian reached a narrow gap between two buildings. The creature lunged into the alley, but Ethan reached Julian first, pulling him away just as the blade slashed the wall beside them. Julian breathed hard. "Why are you risking this much for me?" "Because if you die, Ethan said the whole night ends with me. Julian stared at him. Then we both fight. Together they faced the creature at the alley's entrance. The monster's blade glowed brighter, the metal warping into a new lethal curve. It was evolving again, anticipating the ninth death. Ethan stepped forward, soaked, exhausted, and furious. "If I am last," he whispered, "then you do not get him tonight." The creature crouched low, ready to kill. Julian clenched his fists. "Then let's end this chase." And the storm swallowed them all as the creature struck forward with the force of the night itself. The creature lunged with a sound that tore the air apart. Rain twisted around its body like smoke as its blade cleaved a violent arc through the alley. Ethan shoved Julian aside just in time, the edge missing them by inches and carving a deep scar through the brick wall. Chunks of stone fell around them. The world contracted to lightning, water, and the monstrous form advancing with unstoppable certainty. Julian scrambled to his feet. Ethan kept himself between Julian and the creature, though every instinct screamed to run. But running would not change anything. Julian was the ninth name, and Ethan was the last. The creature would not let either of them go. At the far end of the alley, Lila, Claire, Evelyn, Victor, and Daniel watched helplessly as the confrontation played out. Victor tried stepping forward, but pain forced him to stop. Claire held him back. Lila covered her mouth in horror, rain streaming down her cheeks. They could do nothing without drawing the creature toward them. Julian whispered to Ethan, "We need a plan, a real one, not just running." Ethan nodded, his breath heavy. "Then follow my lead, and no matter what happens, stay alive." The creature crouched low, its limbs bent into unnatural spear-like shapes. Its blade lifted, glowing brighter with each passing moment. Ethan felt the night shift around them, as if the city itself leaned toward the creature's will. Lightning struck a rooftop nearby. The flash outlined the monster perfectly. Its form had changed again, no longer just twisted flesh and shadow, but something sharper, something more intelligent. Its movements had rhythm now, like a predator that learned with each hunt. Ethan stepped sideways, drawing the creature's attention. Julian mirrored him on the other side. They moved in a triangle, giving the creature two targets separated by just enough space to force it to choose. It chose Ethan. The blade shot forward with impossible speed. Ethan ducked and rolled, gravel scraping his palms. The creature spun, adjusting instantly. Julian hurled a piece of broken brick. It struck the creature's back, buying Ethan a moment to stand. Julian shouted, "Come on, ugly. Try someone who fights back." The monster turned. Its head snapped in Julian's direction. The blade twitched. Rain gathered on its surface, vibrating with unnatural resonance. Julian gasped. "Ethan, it is charging something." The air thickened with static. Lightning flickered unnaturally, bending toward the creature as if drawn to it. The blade brightened, splitting light across the walls. Ethan realized what was happening. "Move." It It is going to attack at range. Julian dove aside. A beam of white static erupted from the creature's blade, slicing through the alley. The beam scorched the brick wall where Julian had stood. Smoke hissed from the wound in the stone. Julian coughed. Okay, it shoots lightning now. The creature advanced again. Ethan yelled, "Draw it out of the alley, toward the open street. There we have room to maneuver." Julian nodded and sprinted. Ethan followed. The monster gave chase, its limbs scraping walls with thunderous noise. They burst into the street where the group waited. Lila screamed, "Ethan, behind you." The creature lunged again. Ethan spun and kicked a loose piece of metal into its path. It slowed the monster for barely a second. But that second mattered. Daniel grabbed Evelyn and pulled her behind a crashed vehicle. Victor stood ready with the broken pipe, though his injury made every movement a gamble. Claire held on to Lila, both shaking. Julian pointed toward a collapsed construction scaffold. Ethan there. They ran for it. The creature followed. Julian led it directly beneath the scaffold, then dove aside. Ethan grabbed a loose cable and pulled with all his strength. The scaffold groaned, then collapsed with a roar, burying the creature beneath a pile of rusted steel beams and concrete slabs. The street shook. Dust exploded upward. Rain turned the debris into mud. For a moment, there was only silence. Lila whispered, "Did we kill it?" Ethan shook his head. "No, but we bought time. Move, Julian. Everyone move." They hurried down the street toward the abandoned commuter rail station. The tracks stretched north, the only route that might give them distance. The creature would free itself soon. Julian jogged beside Ethan. "You are thinking of splitting up." Ethan did not answer, but Julian understood. "You think if I run one way and you run another, it will follow me?" Ethan nodded grimly. "It must. I am the last name. It cannot end the cycle until it reaches me, but it also must kill you first. You are the key to delaying it." Julian swallowed. "Then I will run." Ethan stopped. "No, not blindly. You run with purpose. Toward the river, toward the old power plant. That place is fortified. If you can get inside," Julian finished the thought, "I might survive long enough for you to find a way to end this." Ethan nodded. "Yes," but the others overheard. Lila cried, "Ethan, no, you cannot send him alone." Victor tried stepping forward. "Ethan, this is suicide. He will not make it 10 minutes alone with that thing loose." Ethan clenched his fists. "If I go with him, it will kill him immediately. If he stays with us, it will kill all of you. This is the only way." Evelyn sobbed. "There must be another choice." Claire whispered, "The list does not allow other choices." Julian took a deep breath, then placed a steady hand on Ethan's shoulder. "You saved me twice tonight. Let me return the favor." Ethan looked at him through the rain. "You do not owe me anything, Julian. You just have to live." Julian nodded once. Then he ran. He sprinted across the flooded street, heading west toward the river. His silhouette disappeared through the sheets of rain. The group stood frozen, breaths trembling. Daniel whispered, "Do you think he will make it?" Ethan answered quietly, "I think he will make it as long as he can, and that is enough to change what comes next." A deep metallic groan echoed behind them. The debris pile began to shift. Steel beams rolled aside. Concrete cracked. something monstrous rose from beneath the wreckage, glowing with an unnatural inner light. The creature had absorbed the force of the collapse. Its limbs were longer, its blade thicker, brighter. It emitted a low rumble like a furnace inhaling air. Evelyn screamed, "It is tracking Julian already, I can feel it." Ethan stepped forward. Then we moved north. "Now, if Julian gives us time, we use it." They ran down the tracks leading away from the station, rain hammering the steel beneath their feet. Behind them, the creature climbed onto the street, scanning its surroundings, its head tilted toward the west where Julian had fled, then toward the north where Ethan's group ran. It made a choice. Lightning struck the ground as the creature sprinted west at impossible speed. Julian's fate was sealed, but his sacrifice had bought Ethan one final chance to face the truth waiting at the end of the list. The tracks stretched into the storm like two silver scars cutting across the drowned city. Ethan led the group north, every step splashing through deep puddles as rain hammered the metal rails beneath their feet. The wind howled along the corridor of old warehouses, carrying the echoes of distant thunder. Behind them, the creature had vanished toward the west, sprinting after Julian. Each second Julian stayed alive was a second the group stayed out of the monster's direct path. But the seconds were thin, and the night was tightening around them. Evelyn stumbled, catching herself on Lila's arm. Claire hurried to steady her. Victor limped heavily beside Daniel, breathing through sharp waves of pain. Ethan scanned every rooftop and alley. He kept expecting to see the creature reappear in front of them rather than behind. It moved through the city faster than anything alive. If Julian fell, it would turn instantly, closing the distance in minutes. They reached an elevated rail platform overlooking the flood-swollen river. The bridge ahead had partially collapsed from the storm. One side sagged dangerously, leaving only a narrow path along the support beams. Below, the river churned, angry and dark. Daniel cursed softly. "We cannot cross this. One wrong step and we're gone." Ethan studied the wrecked bridge. They had no choice. Every road behind them was death, and every minute brought the creature closer. "We cross," he said. "Single file, slow. Hold the railing where it still stands." Victor looked at him as if Ethan were asking him to fly across the river. Ethan met his eyes. "You can do this. Stay focused." Victor exhaled shakily. "Then let's move." Lila went first, gripping the twisted metal railing with white knuckles. Claire followed, guiding Evelyn inch by inch. Victor went next with Ethan supporting him from behind. Daniel stayed at the rear, scanning for threats. The bridge groaned beneath their weight, protesting every movement. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the collapsed beams, and swirling water below. Rain ran down the metal, making it slick and treacherous. Halfway across, a distant roar echoed from the west. Evelyn froze. "It is coming back." Ethan's pulse quickened. "Keep moving. Do not stop." The roar grew louder, closer, violent. The beast had finished hunting Julian sooner than they hoped. "Too soon," Claire whispered. "Ethan, it is above the rooftops." Ethan looked over his shoulder toward the skyline. A silhouette leapt between buildings with impossible speed. The creature's glowing blade left a streak of distorted light in the rain. It was no longer chasing. It was tracking, direct, relentless, efficient. It knows the ninth name is not dead, Ethan said. It is coming to finish the 9th and 10th together, Victor muttered. Then we need to get off this bridge now. But the bridge was long and the group fragile. Claire slipped. Her boot skidded on the slick beam. Evelyn shrieked and grabbed her arm, barely keeping her from falling into the river. Victor reached out to steady them. The entire bridge shook. Ethan held on to Victor and pulled them all back into balance. Focus, he said. One step at a time. We survive together. They continued, inching forward. The creature struck the rail platform behind them. Metal screamed. The entire structure shook violently. Daniel nearly fell, but caught a support column. The creature crouched at the edge of the platform, its body dripping with river water, glowing faintly from its recent evolution. Its blade carved a burning line across the platform as it prepared to leap. Move, Ethan shouted. They sprinted along the narrow beam. The bridge shuddered under their weight. The wind hurled water into their faces. The creature leapt. It soared over the gap, effortlessly landing on the beam behind them. Its weight warping the metal. The bridge dipped violently. Evelyn screamed. Claire pulled her forward. Victor stumbled and Ethan caught him. Keep going, Ethan yelled. Do not look back. They were within 20 feet of the stable portion of the bridge when the creature lunged forward again, blade slicing through a support cable. The beam dipped sharply, sending Lila sliding. She grabbed the railing with both hands, her legs dangling over the river. Ethan turned back. Lila, hold on. The creature moved toward her. Victor roared through the pain and swung his broken pipe at the creature's leg, buying a heartbeat of delay. The pipe snapped, but the creature paused just long enough. Ethan grabbed Lila's arm and hauled her up. Daniel reached forward, stabilizing them. The group reached the stable section of the bridge and lunged onto firm ground. Ethan shoved Lila ahead, then turned to see the creature preparing to leap again. The bridge was ending, but Ethan knew he needed one more second to save the others. He waited, watched, calculated. When the creature jumped, Ethan cut to the side as the monster landed where he had stood. The beam beneath it snapped, unable to bear its evolved weight. The creature dropped partially through the gap, its claws digging into the metal. Ethan grabbed Daniel. Run! They sprinted into the northern district as the creature tore itself free with a roar that pierced the storm. Victor collapsed near an old warehouse, gasping. Lila and Claire helped Evelyn under the broken awning. Daniel turned to Ethan. We cannot keep outrunning it. If Julian is dead, it will come for you with everything it has. Ethan nodded. Yes, which means there must be something that still delays it, something connected to the list. Claire stepped closer, rain dripping down her face. Marcus said the final name is always the same. That means the list isn't about killing. It is about guiding. Whoever made it wants you somewhere specific. Ethan felt the truth forming painfully. The list was not a death sentence. It was a map leading him to the place where the cycle would end. Evelyn whispered. Then where does it lead, Ethan? Ethan unfolded the soaked paper. The final address, printed next to his name, appeared faintly beneath the smudged ink. An address he recognized instantly: the old Black Ridge Asylum. Victor's breath caught. That place has been abandoned for 20 years. Daniel stepped back, shaking his head. You think the source of this thing is there? It isn't a place, Ethan said quietly. It is a beginning and maybe an end. Lightning illuminated the rooftops. The creature stood on the far end of the street, scanning for movement, its blade glowing brighter than before. Ethan looked at the group. If we go there, it will follow. And maybe for the first time since this night began, we will be the ones choosing the ground. Victor forced himself to stand. Then let us end it where it began. The creature saw them. It crouched low, ready to chase. Ethan pointed toward the asylum, barely visible through the storm. Then we run together. No more splitting, no more sacrifices. Lila nodded fiercely. Together. Daniel gripped his wrench. Together. Claire and Evelyn joined them. The creature roared. Ethan ran, and the final part of the night began. The road to the old Black Ridge Asylum twisted through the northern district like a scar the city tried to forget. The rain fell quieter here, as if the storm held its breath. Fog rose from the cracked pavement, drifting around Ethan and the others in pale ribbons. The asylum stood at the end of the road, a towering structure of rotted stone and broken windows. Its silhouette loomed through the lightning like a giant waiting for them. Ethan felt the weight of the night settle around him. Every step tightened something inside his chest. The list had guided them here. Every name, every death, every escape had pushed them toward this place. The asylum was not a random destination. It was the center, the origin, the point where the cycle began. Behind them, the creature stalked the street, its limbs bending with sharp precision, its blade glowing with torment. It did not attack, not yet. It followed, herding them exactly where it wanted them, just as the list intended. Victor limped beside Ethan, his breath shallow and strained. Lila clung to Claire as they walked. Evelyn whispered a prayer under her breath. Daniel gripped his wrench, though everyone knew the tool was useless. The group stopped at the rusted gates of the asylum. Faded letters above the arch read, Black Ridge State Institute. Rain dripped from the metal bars, echoing through the empty courtyard beyond. Ethan pushed the gate open. The hinges shrieked, a sound too close to a human cry. Lila whispered Ethan, "Why here? Why does it end here?" "Because someone wants me here," Ethan replied. "Because someone designed this path, and because the creature will not stop until I walk through that door." They stepped into the courtyard. The building swallowed them in its shadow. Windows, shattered glass littered the floor like teeth. The main doors hung open, split down the middle. Ethan paused at the threshold. The air inside pulsed with a cold that felt impossible. Not temperature, but memory. Something old, something waiting. Victor said quietly, "I came here once when I was a kid, snuck in with friends. We heard stories about this place. patients disappearing, experiments, people losing their minds. We thought it was just ghost stories. Claire looked up at the broken windows. I do not think they were stories. They entered. The asylum interior was a cathedral of decay. The ceiling sagged overhead. Rusted bed frames lay scattered across the hall. Tangles of wires and peeling paint curled from the walls like dead vines. Lightning flashed through the windows, illuminating long hallways stretching into darkness. The group moved slowly through the central corridor, guided by Ethan's determination. The creature waited at the entrance, watching silently, its glowing blade reflecting off the wet floor. It would follow when they went deep enough. Evelyn shivered uncontrollably. I feel something here. Not the creature, something else. Daniel nodded. A presence. Heavy, like the walls are watching. Ethan believed them. The deeper they walked, the stronger the pull became. Something in the asylum knew his name long before it appeared on the list. They reached a wide lobby. An overturned reception desk lay on its side. Papers old and brittle littered the floor. Lightning flashed, revealing a message scratched into the wall behind the desk. "We remember our own," Claire whispered. "What does that mean?" Ethan swallowed. "That someone here was once connected to me." Lila looked terrified. "Ethan, please tell me you have never been here." "Not that I remember," he said, but the words tasted wrong in his mouth. Victor studied the scratches. "They are old, decades, but fresh ones overlap the old ones. Someone is still adding to them." Before they could speak again, a distant scream echoed from the second floor, high-pitched, echoing through the hallways like a memory breaking free. Evelyn grabbed Ethan's arm. "That was human." Ethan shook his head. "Not human now. A recording, a memory stuck in the walls. This place is not alive, but it is not dead either." The lights flickered once. A shadow shifted at the top of the staircase. A shape, small and trembling. A girl no older than 10 stood there staring down at them with hollow eyes. Her hospital gown dripped with water, though she was dry. Her lips parted. "Ethan Cole." The group froze. Lila whispered, "That is impossible." Ethan stepped forward. "Who are you?" The girl blinked. Her voice cracked like broken glass. "We waited. You were the last one. We remembered your name." Victor whispered, "Ethan, I think this place is showing us something. Not real, not alive." "Echoes." The girl tilted her head. The creature crawled out of the quiet room. "You made it. You made the list." Ethan shuddered. "Why me?" "Because you survived the first time." The lightning outside thundered through the building. The girl flickered like a dying flame, then vanished. Evelyn covered her mouth with both hands. "Ethan." What did she mean? Ethan stared up the staircase, unable to breathe. "I do not know, but I think the list was not the beginning. I think it is the continuation." The floor trembled. The creature entered the asylum at last, its blade dragging across the tile with a sound that drowned their hearts. It approached slowly, utterly confident, the walls bending shadows around its form. Daniel stepped back. "We need to move now. If we stay here, we die." Ethan nodded. "Upstairs. That is where it wants us. The pattern leads upward. They climbed the staircase. Every step groaned beneath them. The hallway above was lined with doors most ripped off their hinges. Faded labels read isolation ward, psychiatric evaluation, memory research wing. Claire whispered, "Memory. What did they do here?" Ethan walked toward the end of the hall, drawn by something he did not understand. Behind him, the creature climbed the stairs, its claws tapping rhythmically. They reached a final heavy door labeled Room 32. Ethan froze. His entire body went cold. Lila touched his arm. "Ethan, what is it?" "I know this room," Ethan whispered. "I do not know how, but I know it." He reached for the handle. Before he could turn it, the creature arrived behind them, its towering form filling the hallway. The blade rose, glowing like a dying star. No more delays, no more diversions. It had reached the point the list demanded. Ethan opened the door. Inside was a single chair in the center of the room. Restraints dangled from its arms. Dust covered everything except the chair itself, which was clean untouched, as though someone prepared it for him. Claire gasped. "Ethan, this room was used for treatments, for experiments, for erasing memories." Ethan staggered back. He remembered flashes of light pain confinement, screams, his own voice. Victor whispered, "Ethan, you were here." The creature stepped into the room. Ethan turned toward it. Fear burning but clarity rising. The list did not choose me. The list remembered me. The creature reared back, blade trembling with anticipation. Ethan stepped forward. "I know why you brought me here." The storm howled through the shattered window. The night prepared for its revelation. Thunder shook the broken windows of Room 32 as Ethan faced the creature that had hunted him through the entire night. Rain hammered the shattered glass panes, dripping into the room in cold streaks. The others stood behind him in terrified silence, their breathing shallow. The creature's blade glowed with a deep, pulsing light, as if it recognized the room the way an animal recognizes the scent of its birthplace. Ethan forced himself to breathe. Every instinct screamed to run, but something stronger held him there. The list, the asylum, the memories clawing their way back into his mind. None of this was coincidence. He could feel truth pressing against the inside of his skull like fingers scraping bone. Claire whispered from behind him, "Ethan, what do you remember?" Ethan closed his eyes. Flashes, light exploding behind his eyelids, straps tightening around his wrists and ankles, a voice saying his name again and again. "Ethan Cole, Ethan Cole, Ethan Cole." Then pain, sharp and white, tearing through his mind. He opened his eyes with a shudder. "I was here. I was a patient." Lila gasped. "But that's impossible. You would have known. You would have remembered." Ethan shook his head slowly. "Not if they erased it." Claire stepped forward, her voice trembling. "They did experiments here. Memory extraction, trauma mapping. They tried to pull memories out of people's minds." Victor swallowed hard. "And put them where?" Ethan stared at the creature. "Into something like that." The blade twitched as if responding to his realization. The creature stepped fully into the room, its massive form bending the shadows. It did not attack. It waited. Daniel pointed at the restraints on the chair. "Ethan, Someone prepared that for you. Ethan stepped closer. His voice was low, because this is where the cycle ends and where it began. The creature moved one limb forward, dragging its blade across the floor. Sparks scattered. It lifted its head and released a low groan that vibrated through the walls. The asylum itself seemed to respond, the lights flickering with forgotten energy. Then Ethan spoke words he did not understand until they left his mouth. "You were made from us." Everyone froze. Ethan continued, voice steady and hollow. "From every patient who died here, from every memory they stole, they put their failures into something that could survive them, something that could be controlled by a sequence. The list," Claire whispered. "The list controlled its behavior, like a program." Ethan nodded. "And I was the last subject, the one who survived the extraction, the one they could not erase completely." Evelyn stepped backward. "Ethan, are you connected to it?" Before he could answer, the entire room trembled. A door at the back of room 32, one no one had noticed before, creaked open as if pushed by invisible hands. Cold air poured out, carrying whispers that twisted through the room. Lila whispered, "Ethan, do you hear that?" "Yes." The whispers formed words. "Come back. Remember. Finish what began." The creature turned toward the open door. Its blade dimmed slightly. It stepped backward, not attacking Ethan, but guiding him. Victor hissed, "Ethan, do not follow it." But Ethan already knew he had to. If he ran, the cycle would repeat. If he fought, the group would die. If he did nothing, the creature would hunt them until dawn. He turned to the group. "Wait for me here." Claire shook her head violently. "No, we are not letting you walk into that alone. You must," Ethan said. "If this is a trap, only I spring it. If this is the truth, only I can end it." Daniel grabbed his arm. "Ethan, you're our leader. You brought us this far. We can finish this together." Ethan looked at each of them. Fear, hope, desperation, and something more, trust. "I will come back if I can," he said. "But if I don't run, do not let the cycle rebuild." He stepped toward the open door. The creature followed. Inside was a narrow hallway lined with steel panels. Clean, too clean. Unlike the rest of the asylum, this section had power. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, creating pulses of white that revealed a deeper chamber at the end of the hall. Ethan walked slowly. As he did, the creature made low sounds, like it was remembering something long buried. The whispers grew louder. "Ethan, Ethan, Ethan." He reached the chamber. Inside were dozens of machines covered in dust, electrodes, restraint tables, memory extraction rigs, everything arranged in a circle around a single large tank filled with dark fluid. The tank hummed softly like a living heart. Ethan felt his pulse match it. Claire, Evelyn, Daniel and the others crept behind him despite his warning, unable to let him vanish alone. Daniel whispered, "My God, they built something alive." Ethan stared into the tank. Shapes floated inside. Memories, fractured images, people screaming, children crying, faces melting into ink. His own face appeared in the reflection, then vanished beneath the rippling black. Lila touched the tank's surface. "What is this?" Ethan answered quietly. "A memory reservoir, the place where they stored everything they took. It is where they made the creature and where they kept the rest of us." Victor felt the walls. "But why bring you back here?" Ethan stepped closer, leaning toward the glass. "Because the final name and the cycle, the last name resets it. They needed me back at the origin to start it again." Claire gasped. "The last subject triggers the next creation." Ethan nodded. "And I think they built the creature as both hunter and guardian, to collect the pieces left behind, to force the survivors here." The creature approached the tank. Its blade dimmed completely. It placed one hand on the glass. The whispers grew louder. Hundreds of voices merged into one. "Return." Ethan reached out his hand. Lila shouted, "Ethan, stop." Too late. His palm touched the tank. A shock tore through his body, memories exploding like thunder. He saw himself as a child being dragged through the asylum doors. He saw doctors strapping him into the chair in room 32. He saw the experiments. He saw the moment something inside him was torn out, leaving a hollow echo. He saw others screaming. He saw the creation of the creature, and then he saw the truth. The creature was not hunting him. It was bringing him home. Ethan staggered back, screaming. The creature jerked violently, its blade flickering with sudden instability. The tank hummed louder, lights bursting overhead. Claire ran to Ethan, catching him before he collapsed. "Ethan, what did you see?" He could barely breathe. "I saw me, part of me, inside that thing." The creature froze, hearing his words. Its limbs trembled. It tilted its head like a child hearing its name for the first time. The tank cracked. A thin line ran down the glass. Evelyn stepped back. "Ethan, something is waking up in there." The creature released a mournful sound. Ethan whispered, "The cycle is alive." The tank cracked again. Dark fluid poured onto the floor. Something inside began to move, something bigger than the creature, and the night prepared to open its jaws once again. The crack in the tank widened with a sound like bones splitting. Dark fluid rushed across the chamber floor, swirling around Ethan's boots. The scent was metallic and cold, like forgotten blood exposed to air after decades. The group stumbled backward as the lights flickered overhead one by one, giving out until only the pulsing glow of the tank illuminated the room. The creature stood between Ethan and the others, trembling uncontrollably, its limbs spasming as though fighting two commands at once. Claire clung to Ethan's arm, trying to steady him. "Ethan, stay with us." "What did you see?" Ethan breathed like someone drowning. Memories crushed into him all at once. Not flashes, not fragments, whole pieces of himself taken years ago now, forced back into place. His hand trembled violently. "I was here. I was the last subject. They tried to erase everything that made me human, everything that made me remember." Daniel said quietly, "They failed." He looked at the creature. Someone else survived the procedure. Someone who became that. The tank groaned again, and the glass began to buckle outward. Something inside pushed against the barrier. A shape, a limb, a face, not fully formed, not human, but echoing humanity like a twisted reflection in broken water. Evelyn whispered, God help us all. The creature released a low, anguished cry. Its blade dimmed, then brightened erratically, as if losing control. It stumbled backward toward the tank as though begging whatever was inside to stop. Lila pulled Claire behind her. "We need to get out of this room now." But Ethan shook his head weakly. "No, this is what it brought me here for. This is the cycle. The tank opens, the memories return. A new thing is born from the old." Victor gritted his teeth, lifting himself despite the pain. "Then we break the cycle. We destroy it before it fully forms." Ethan nodded. "Yes, but if we strike too early, the creature will attack. It's guarding it, or protecting it. I do not know which." The creature let out another guttural sound, like metal tearing itself apart. It turned its head slowly toward Ethan. Its eyes flickered with two lights, not one, as though something inside it was waking up along with the tank. Ethan whispered, "You remember me?" The creature twitched. Its blade lifted, half in threat, half in recognition. A heavy resonance vibrated through the room like an ancient machine restarting. The tank cracked a third time. The force of it pushed the creature forward, as if urging it to complete something. Liquid spilled out in violent waves, splashing across the chamber. Something inside pushed harder. A deformed hand pressed against the glass. Evelyn screamed. Claire covered her mouth. Victor took a step forward, raising a pipe he had grabbed from the floor. Ethan held out his hand. "Stop! Do not attack it yet." Lila stared at him. "Are you insane? If this thing is connected to me," Ethan said, "then killing it might kill all of us, especially if we do not understand what it is." A deep voice whispered through the chamber, though it came from nowhere and everywhere. "Ethan." Ethan froze. Evelyn sobbed. "That voice, it sounds like..." Claire finished for her. Like Ethan, another crack, a larger one. The tank was seconds from exploding. Daniel shouted, "Everyone take cover." He pulled Evelyn behind a heavy machine. Claire dragged Lila down behind a steel beam. Victor braced himself behind a toppled cabinet. Ethan stood his ground, unable to move. Not because of fear, but because his name kept echoing through the room from the tank itself. The glass burst. Dark fluid erupted outward, flooding the chamber like a collapsing wave. Machines toppled. Papers flew through the air. The ceiling lights shattered. The creature let out a howl so piercing the room trembled violently, and then the thing inside the tank stepped forward. At first, it was only a shadow rising from the pooling black. Then it took shape. A tall, featureless form like a human carved from dark liquid, its skin rippling like the surface of a dying lake, its face smooth and blank except for faint indentations where eyes and a mouth should have been. It staggered forward as if learning to stand. The creature backed away, lowering its blade. It did not attack. It bowed. Victor whispered. They made a second one. Ethan felt the truth ripple through him. No, they made the first one and used its memories to build the creature. Claire stared in horror. Then that means this thing knows you. The liquid figure lifted its head and looked directly at Ethan, though it had no eyes to see him with. Ethan whispered, Who are you? A distorted voice answered. A voice layered with hundreds of others, but anchored by one he recognized instinctively. I am what they took from you. The room shook again. The creature stepped protectively in front of the liquid figure as if shielding it. Its blade glowed in warning, sensing the group's fear. Lila clung to Daniel. What does it want? Ethan stepped forward. Me. The liquid figure extended a trembling hand. When Ethan moved closer, the air changed, warped, like gravity shifting directions. The memories in his mind churned violently, pulling him forward. Ethan gasped. It's pulling something out of me. Claire ran to him and grabbed his arm. Ethan, fight it. But Ethan shook his head. No, it's not taking. It's returning. Images flashed. Him as a boy screaming. Doctors writing his name on a clipboard. A machine draining light from his chest. A voice saying, "The memory must be removed, or the cycle will fail." Ethan staggered as a surge of memory slammed into him. The liquid figure whispered, "Your name was the last one they took." Victor stepped forward, pipe raised. "Step away from him." The creature shifted instantly, blade rising ready to strike. Ethan lifted his hand. "Stop, all of you. This is not an attack." The liquid figure stepped closer until it stood inches from him. It reached out and gently touched Ethan's forehead. Light burst behind his eyes. Not pain, memory. His memory. Ethan screamed as the final piece returned. His knees buckled. Claire caught him before he collapsed. Lila knelt beside him, sobbing. Ethan gasped for breath. "I remember everything." Daniel asked, "What did they do to you?" Ethan looked up, eyes hollow with truth. "They separated my mind. Half they kept, half they put into that." He pointed at the liquid figure. Lila covered her mouth. Then the creature. Ethan finished. "The creature is everything they harvested from everyone else, but this one is me." The chamber vibrated as the liquid figure turned its head toward the creature. The creature lowered its blade in submission. Evelyn whispered, "What happens now?" The liquid figure whispered softly, "The cycle must end." The floor cracked beneath them. The walls groaned. A deep rumble shook the entire asylum, as if something enormous beneath the building had awakened in response. The creature raised its blade not at Ethan, but at the crumbling room itself. Ethan's heartbeat thundered. Whatever came next would either break the cycle or finish it forever. The floor buckled beneath Ethan's feet as the asylum shuddered, the walls vibrating like a living organism waking from a long, unnatural sleep. Dust rained from the ceiling. The dark fluid from the shattered tank spread across the floor in widening ripples, reflecting the flickering lights overhead. The liquid figure stood motionless in the center of the chamber, its faceless head tilted slightly upward, as if listening to something far below. The creature, still crouched in a guarded stance, turned toward the floor as well. Its blade pulsed with unstable light. Something was moving beneath them, something vast. Lila grabbed Ethan's arm. "Ethan, what is happening?" Ethan swallowed hard. The cycle is not just about memories. It is about containing something older than us, older than this building. Victor limped closer, bracing against a collapsed machine. "You mean this nightmare isn't the final form?" Ethan shook his head. No, this was preparation. A deep rumble vibrated through the walls. The metal plating beneath the tank split down the middle, the crack expanding outward like a jagged wound. Cold air erupted upward from the newly opened gap, carrying a smell like wet stone and forgotten graves. Daniel's eyes widened. "There's another chamber below us," Claire whispered. But why would they hide something under the extraction room? Ethan touched the wall for balance as the floor trembled again. Because they needed the reservoir to feed it. Evelyn's voice shook. "Do you mean the memories?" They fed memories to something. Not just memories, Ethan said. The suffering, the trauma, the final moments of every patient they experimented on. Every mind they broke. They collected it, Lila whispered. For what? Ethan's gaze drifted toward the liquid figure. To build something that could not die. A loud metallic shriek tore through the chamber as a massive piece of flooring collapsed, revealing a vast abyss below. The darkness beneath them swirled like ink. Something inside it shifted, something enormous. Claire screamed. "The floor is going to give." Ethan pulled her back just as another portion of the chamber collapsed. Machines tumbled into the abyss and vanished without a sound. The creature leapt backward, grabbing onto a steel support beam. The liquid figure remained perfectly still as the floor crumbled around its feet. Its body rippled but did not fall. It seemed tethered to something unseen. Daniel pointed at it. "Why isn't it falling?" Ethan answered, "Because the thing below is calling it back." The liquid figure slowly turned its faceless head toward Ethan. The voice that emerged was distorted and layered like a chorus, speaking through broken speakers. "Come downstairs." Victor shuddered. "Oh, hell no." But Ethan stepped forward. The creature extended one limb, protectively blocking Ethan's path. Ethan whispered, "I know you're trying to protect me, but we didn't come this far to run." The liquid figure extended its hand toward the opening in the floor. The dark abyss pulsed in response. Claire shouted, "Ethan, please. You don't know what is down there." He looked at her, eyes steady despite the terror gnawing inside him. "I do." He stepped toward the gap, but before he could descend, the abyss below erupted. A massive surge of shadow shot upward like a jet of liquid night. The entire chamber convulsed. The dark column twisted, then shattered into thousands of swirling tendrils that reached along the walls, pulling the room apart like paper. Evelyn screamed. Lila shielded her. Victor grabbed Daniel to keep him from falling. The creature let out a roar that shook the rusted beams. It plunged its glowing blade into the floor in a futile attempt to anchor itself as the tendrils lashed around the chamber. Then the abyss spoke, not with a voice, with memories, hundreds of them, thousands, screams, pleas, laughter breaking into sobs, Ethan's own voice calling for help. Claire's gasp, Victor's rage, Lila's childhood, Evelyn's grief, Daniel's fear. The memories flooded the chamber in a tidal wave of sound. The group clutched their heads in agony as each flash tore through their minds like shards of glass. Ethan felt part of himself ripping open. "Not again," he whispered. "Not again." The liquid figure raised its arm. Instantly, the memories snapped to silence. The chamber froze. The abyss quieted. The tendrils retreated like shadows afraid of the light. Ethan gasped for breath. What "What was that?" the liquid figure answered. "The reservoir below contains all discarded minds, all failed attempts, all fragments they could not use. It waits, it listens, it grows." Claire trembled. "It is alive and hungry." Evelyn sobbed. The creature pulled itself back up and positioned between the abyss and the group. It raised its blade defensively. For the first time since the night began, it looked afraid. The liquid figure stepped toward the abyss. Its body flickered as if losing cohesion. Another tremor shook the asylum. Ethan realized what was happening. "The reservoir is trying to consume you," he whispered. The liquid figure nodded slowly. "Because I am the missing piece. Without me, it cannot become whole." Lila shook her head in disbelief. "It wants to become that massive thing. It wants to evolve again." Ethan nodded. The creature was version 1. The liquid figure is version 2. And below us is the unfinished version 3. Victor cursed under his breath. "Then we destroy it before it becomes anything." Daniel gripped his wrench. "How we have nothing that could stop that." Ethan turned to the creature. Its blade flickered. Its limbs shuddered. It was weakening because part of it is already inside me. Ethan whispered. "If I connect to it again fully, it might destabilize." Claire's face drained of color. "Ethan, no. If you connect to that, you could die. Or worse." The liquid figure approached him. It extended its hand. "Join with me, and we end the cycle." Ethan stared into the formless face. For the first time since he saw it, the creature moved aside, allowing the two of them to stand before the abyss. He reached out his trembling hand. Lila screamed, "Ethan, no!" Their hands touched. Light burst through the chamber, blinding white. The asylum shook violently. The abyss roared as if in agony. The creature collapsed to its knees. The dark tendrils surged upward, balled into a knot, then exploded outward in a shockwave of shattered memory. The group was thrown across the room. Ethan felt his consciousness ripping in half. He felt himself merging, becoming, unbecoming, falling, rising. He saw his childhood. He saw the experiments. He saw himself screaming. He saw his mind being separated. He saw the creature being born. He saw the abyss waiting. And he saw himself, both halves moving toward each other, like fractured mirrors aligning. Ethan screamed one voice, hundreds of voices as the cycle twisted into a new shape around him. The chamber cracked open, light poured upward, and Ethan disappeared into the abyss below. Ethan did not fall. He dissolved. Light and darkness wrapped around him like two halves of a torn world, stitching themselves back together. His body had vanished. His voice had vanished. His thoughts stretched across a vast space that was not a space at all. It was the abyss, living and breathing, a consciousness made of millions of fractured minds that churned in eternal unrest. He sensed the presence of the liquid figure beside him, yet also inside him. Their thoughts overlapped, tangled, collided, broke apart, then fused again. They were not two souls merging. They were one soul remembering itself. The missing half of Ethan's mind surged back into him with a force that nearly broke the fragile shape of who he had become. He screamed, but the sound echoed silently through the abyss like ripples on dark water. Above him, far away, the ruined chamber flickered. The group stood at the shattered edge, calling his name, though he heard them as faint distortions swallowed by the abyss. Claire's voice trembled. "Ethan, please come back." "Ethan," Lila sobbed. "We cannot lose you. Not now." Daniel's shout cracked with fear. "Ethan, fight it. You are stronger than this." Victor, barely standing, whispered as if Ethan could hear him, "Do not let them take the rest of you." But the abyss heard them. It always heard everything. The tendrils of memory writhed, coiling around Ethan like serpents made of broken thoughts. Each touch flooded him with thousands of voices, patients screaming, doctors whispering, machines humming, memories of lives that never belonged to him, pressing against his mind, begging to be remembered. The abyss spoke. "You returned. You were always ours." Ethan forced himself to think, and the liquid figure thought with him, "No, we are not yours." The abyss churned as if laughing. "Without us, you are half a shard, a broken experiment. We saved what they took. We kept what they threw away." Images formed around him, children strapped to beds, wires protruding from scalps, the doctors of Blackridge standing like silhouettes of cruelty. Ethan watched his younger self lying on a table, the machine above him glowing white, his mind being sliced, divided, extracted, his memories stolen not to save him, but to create something else. The creature appeared in the vision, born from the remnants of countless patients, a guardian designed to erase all witnesses, a warden made from pain. The liquid figure spoke inside Ethan's thoughts. "They made us, but they never completed us." Ethan pushed back against the swirling darkness. "If I am the final piece, then I choose what becomes whole, not you." The abyss roared, and the entire void shook. Tendrils lashed forward, attempting to wrap around Ethan again, but the liquid figure blocked them. Its form rippled violently as it fought, absorbing the strikes that would have consumed Ethan. Claire's voice echoed faintly again. "Ethan, we see something moving. Get back from the edge." The creature growled above, its blade flashing like lightning striking metal. The asylum trembled. Beams cracked. Dust rained. The group clung to the remains of the floor as the abyss below surged upward like a black storm. Ethan strained toward them, though he had no physical form to move. The liquid figure anchored him, preventing him from slipping deeper into the void. Then the abyss shifted, revealing something new. A structure, a vast cage of metal floating in the darkness. Within it lay countless faces pressed against the bars, flickering like warped memories. Ethan recognized some of them. Marcus, the girl from the steps, dozens more, all broken, all trapped between life and oblivion. Evelyn's voice appeared like a trembling whisper from far above. "Are those souls?" The abyss answered. "They are ours, and you will join them when your name ends." Ethan felt a spike of pain. His name, the last name, the final one on every list, the one the creature had been shaped to collect. The liquid figure reached for Ethan's fractured consciousness. "Your name does not end." "It begins," the abyss screamed in defiance. The chamber above exploded into view. The creature roared. The floor split as a massive column of darkness surged upward, attempting to swallow the group. Claire fell backward, but Victor caught her. Daniel pulled Lila away from the edge just in time. Evelyn screamed as a tendril wrapped around her ankle. The creature sliced it off with its blade. Ethan saw everything at once: the abyss, the group, the creature, the memories, the cycle. They were all threads of the same catastrophic design. But he saw something else too, a weakness. The list, the one rule the creature could never disobey. The sequence that bound its existence and the abyss's hunger. If Ethan broke the sequence, the cycle would collapse. He pushed his thoughts outward, reaching for the creature. It froze. Its blade dimmed. It turned toward the abyss like a soldier awaiting command. Ethan spoke through the void. "Protect them." The creature roared with a fury that shook the chamber. It leapt downward into the abyss, plunging its blade deep into the swirling darkness. The abyss shrieked as the blade's unnatural light tore through its tendrils. The liquid figure strengthened Ethan's thoughts. Break the list. Ethan forced himself into the abyss's core. Memories slammed into him. His mind screamed, but he found the list, the original list, the one that all others mimicked. A glowing sequence of names etched into the center of the void. The first, the last. His name burned brightest. He reached for it. The abyss screamed, "No!" Ethan tore his name from the sequence. Light erupted like a sun exploding underwater. The abyss convulsed. The tendrils withdrew violently. The cage of memories shattered, freeing countless trapped echoes that dissolved into the void like sparks blown into darkness. Above the chamber, the group shielded themselves from the shockwave of light that blasted upward. The creature climbed from the abyss, dragging its blade through the collapsing floor. Its limbs trembled, but its eyes glowed with something different. Not obedience, recognition. Ethan fell upward, rising toward the chamber as the abyss collapsed behind him. The liquid figure rose with him, merging into his form until he felt whole for the first time in his life. His body rematerialized as he landed on the edge of the fractured chamber. Claire lunged forward, catching him. Lila sobbed. Evelyn trembled. Daniel and Victor pulled him upright. Ethan opened his eyes. They were no longer the eyes of someone missing half his mind. He looked at the collapsing abyss and whispered, "It is not finished yet." And somewhere beneath the rubble, the abyss whispered back, weak but not dead, "We will rise again." The asylum groaned, as though its bones were cracking beneath the weight of something ancient awakening. Dust drifted through the air like falling ash. The abyss below had not been destroyed, only wounded. The fractured chamber trembled with each shudder rising from the depths. Ethan stood with the others on the broken ledge, barely able to process the magnitude of what he had just done. He tore his name from the list. He broke the cycle, but the abyss still whispered. Ethan breathed slowly, grounding himself as the last ripples of the merging experience faded. He felt whole in a way he never had before. His mind clear, his memories sharp. His identity no longer split between two halves, yet clarity only magnified the horror around him. Claire held onto his arm. Ethan, can you hear us? He nodded. Yes, all of you, everything. I'm here. Lila wiped her tears. But we saw you disappear into the abyss. You were gone. I was inside it, Ethan said, and I brought myself back. Victor leaned heavily on Daniel, but even through the pain, he stared at Ethan with something close to awe. That thing, whatever it was, you fought it. Ethan shook his head. I didn't fight it. I rewrote the rules it used to bind me, but it's still alive. It's not done. A deep rumble answered his words. Evelyn gasped. It heard you. The creature once their hunter climbed fully out of the abyss, towering over them. Its limbs trembled. Its blade flickered. Its form was no longer steady but unstable, as though the breaking of the list had fractured the foundation of its existence. For the first time, it looked lost. Ethan stepped toward it cautiously. You can hear me now, can't you? The creature tilted its head, eyes flashing. The movements were no longer purely mechanical. Something human echoed beneath its form, fragments of voices, expressions, memories. A distorted groan escaped it, one that carried emotion. It raised its blade, but not in threat, in confusion. Lila whispered, Ethan, is it becoming like you? No, Ethan whispered. It's remembering what it was made from. A massive tremor shook the chamber. The abyss erupted with a burst of black fluid that splashed across the walls like ink. The sound was deafening, like 1,000 voices screaming in unison. Claire grabbed Ethan's hand. The abyss is getting stronger. If it reforms, it won't, Ethan said. Not if we end it now. Daniel frowned. End it. How we barely survived standing near it. Ethan looked at the creature. It lowered its blade, watching him with an obedience deeper than instinct. Because now it listens to me. Another tremor shattered more flooring. A chasm opened near Evelyn's feet. Daniel pulled her back just in time. The abyss's tendrils surged upward, clawing at the edges of the chamber, seeking to drag the group down into its darkness. The creature roared and sliced through the nearest tendril, sparks erupting as its blade clashed against the shadowy mass. Ethan's voice echoed across the chamber with new force. Protect them. The creature obeyed instantly, leaping into the storm of rising tendrils, its blade cutting through the darkness with violent precision. The abyss shrieked, the sound splitting the air. Victor stared in disbelief. It is fighting for us. Ethan nodded. It always could. It just never had a choice. The creature fought relentlessly, but the abyss surged with newfound rage. A colossal tendril wrapped around the creature's torso, pulling it toward the open chasm. The creature screamed, a sound that shook the entire asylum. Evelyn cried out, Ethan, it's dying. No, Ethan said, it is being called back. More tendrils erupted from the pit, grabbing the creature's limbs, dragging it downward. The creature clawed at the stone floor, blade carving trenches in desperation. Ethan ran to the edge. Hold on. The creature turned its head, its expression unreadable, yet filled with something familiar. Recognition, a memory shared. The abyss screamed. Ethan Cole must return. Tendrils reached for him. Claire grabbed him. Ethan, no. He shook his head. If it takes the creature, the abyss will complete itself. It will become something far worse. Then what do we do? Lila cried. Ethan stared into the collapsing darkness. We free it. All of them. He stepped toward the abyss. Daniel shouted, Ethan, stop, you will die. Not if I sever the last link. He closed his eyes, feeling the connection between himself, the creature, and the abyss. 3 points of a broken system, 3 halves of one horrific experiment. His mind reached outward and found the tether, a glowing thread, thin as a spider web, bright as burning memory, connected him to the abyss. It pulsed with echoes of every stolen mind. He grasped it. The abyss roared in agony. The creature roared in unison. The floor cracked violently. Lila screamed, Ethan. He pulled the tether with all of his will. The abyss convulsed, ripping open like a wound. Memories burst upward, thousands of them filling the chamber with phantom voices and light. The tether began to snap. Ethan felt his skull splitting from the force. The abyss hurled a massive tendril upward to crush him. The creature broke free of its restraints. It leapt. Its blade slashed the tendril before it reached Ethan. Ethan pulled harder. The tether snapped. A blinding white explosion tore through the chamber. The tendrils recoiled, screaming, collapsing back into the abyss. The chasm sealed with a quake that shook the entire asylum. Silence followed, deep and absolute. Dust drifted. The dark fluid evaporated. The chamber stilled. Ethan collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath. Claire rushed to him. Ethan, are you alive? He nodded weakly. Yes, it's weakened. The abyss is broken, at least for now. Lila hugged him as tears streamed. You scared us so much. Victor sat on the debris, exhausted. Did we win? Ethan stared into the darkness where the abyss once roared. Not yet. The creature stood in the center of the chamber, still watching, its blade extinguished. Daniel whispered cautiously, Ethan, is it free now? No, Ethan said. It is waiting for what Claire asked. Trembling, Ethan looked at the creature for the last command, and through the silence, something stirred far deeper than the abyss. Something the breaking of the tether had awakened. Something older than the asylum. Ethan whispered, something else is coming. Silence held the asylum like a clenched fist. Dust drifted through the stale air in thin spirals. The abyss beneath the chamber lay sealed under a crust of fractured stone, faint cracks glowing like dying embers. Ethan stared at the closed chasm, feeling the immense pressure of something still alive beneath it. The tether was broken, yes, but breaking chains did not kill the monster they were meant to bind. Lila approached him slowly. Ethan, say something. Anything. He inhaled a shaky breath. It is still moving. Beneath everything. Beneath us. Claire's voice trembled. But you severed the list. You broke its connection. The abyss should be dead. Ethan shook his head. Dead things do not breathe, and that thing is breathing. A deep pulse rippled through the floor at his feet, as if the earth itself had a heartbeat. Victor stepped backward instinctively, wincing at the vibration. Daniel raised his wrench like it meant something. But they all knew steel meant nothing here. Evelyn pressed her shaking hands together. I thought destroying the link would end it. I thought. this would all be over. Ethan closed his eyes. The abyss was not just a machine, not a creation. It was something the experiments woke, something ancient, something that fed on what they tore out of us. It is not done. The creature stood silently before the chasm, its blade extinguished, its limbs trembling with a strange anticipation, as though it sensed the coming shift before any of them did. A low groan vibrated through the walls. The asylum responded. Lights flickered down the corridor. Doors slammed open and shut as if the building were gasping. The air grew colder, thickening with a metallic scent Ethan recognized too well. Memories, not visions, not fragments, living ones. A thin veil of black mist seeped out from the cracks along the sealed abyss, curling toward the walls, crawling upward like smoke searching for oxygen. Claire grabbed Ethan's arm. "What is that?" Ethan whispered. "The remnants of the reservoir, the minds that were trapped there. They are escaping." Victor cursed under his breath. "Of course they are." Evelyn hugged herself tightly. "Then, where are they going?" Ethan hesitated. "Not where. Who?" The mist began taking shape. Figures flickering in and out, like projections from a broken film reel. Faces made of memory. Children, adults, former patients, some screaming, some silent, all hollow. Lila stepped back until she hit the wall. "Ethan, please tell me those are not ghosts." "They're not," Ethan said. "They're memories of the dead." But memories strong enough to stand, Daniel whispered. Then those doctors made an army they could not control. The walls trembled again. The figures turned toward Ethan. They spoke in a single voice, layered with thousands. "Ethan Cole." He closed his eyes, every hair on his skin rising. Claire trembled. "Why do they keep saying your name?" "Because I was the one who got away," Ethan whispered. "They were left behind." "I wasn't." Victor stepped in front of him. "You survived because you fought. That is not a crime." But the memory forms disagreed. They surged forward. A tidal wave of faces and half-formed bodies reaching for Ethan. The creature stepped between them and swung its blade, slicing through the black mist. The specters split apart with an echoing wail, but quickly reformed. Ethan shouted, "Hold them back!" The creature roared and carved a wide arc through the fog. But the memories swarmed faster than it could cut, driven by centuries of pain, trapped identity, and unending hunger. "We are not whole," they hissed. "You must join us," Lila screamed as one of the mist forms lunged toward her. Daniel grabbed her, pulling her away. Victor limped forward with a metal pipe, swiping wildly at the shapes, but the strike passed through them as though they were smoke. Ethan yelled, "Get back, all of you!" But the group stayed as close as they dared behind him, unwilling to flee without him. The mist tightened its circle. Ethan raised his voice. "Listen to me. I broke the cycle. You do not control me. You do not control anything anymore." 1,000 voices answered with a single whisper. "We are not the cycle. We are what the cycle left behind." The asylum walls bulged outward, as though something massive was pushing from inside. Plaster shattered, A deep pulse shook the floor again, and this time the cracks glowed brighter. Claire whispered, "Ethan, the abyss is waking up again." "No," Ethan whispered, "not the abyss, something beneath it." The mist surged again, straight toward Ethan. The creature intercepted, ramming its blade into the ground. A wave of energy burst outward, scattering the memory forms temporarily. For the first time, the blade flickered with a golden glow instead of its usual icy blue. Lila gasped, "Ethan, what is happening to it?" "It is changing," Ethan answered. "Because I changed. Because the list no longer binds it." Victor steadied himself. "Then what does?" Ethan's voice lowered. "Me." The memory forms gathered again, coalescing into a massive shape. Dozens of faces merging into a single towering figure that filled the chamber with a human-shaped silhouette made of living fog. Its eyes glowed like dying stars. Claire whispered in horror, "Ethan, what is that?" "The first prototype," Ethan said. "The one they tried to make before the creature, before me, before everything." The monstrous memory form stepped forward. "You broke our prison. You will rebuild us," Ethan shouted. "I will never be part of you." The memory giant roared and extended a hand downward. Tendrils of black fog shot toward him, hundreds of them. The creature intercepted, stabbing into the center of the mass. Its blade detonated with another burst of golden light. The fog recoiled in agony, splitting apart for several seconds before reforming. Daniel shouted, "We have to get out of this room." Victor pointed to a reinforced side door, half buried under debris. "There, move." Ethan waved them on. "Go, I will hold it back." Claire grabbed him. "Ethan, no, we are not leaving you again." He met her eyes with a depth she had not seen before. "You will not lose me, but I need time." "Go." She hesitated, but Victor pulled her. "Move, Claire, now." The group ran toward the door, pushing debris aside. The chamber roared as the memory giant advanced. Ethan turned to the creature. "Can you hear me?" It nodded. "Protect them," Ethan commanded. "Do not let anything past you." The creature roared, plunging itself between the group and the towering memory form. Its blade erupted with golden fire. Ethan faced the giant alone. "You want what you lost," he said, "but you cannot take it from me. We must be whole again." The voices echoed. Ethan clenched his fists. "Then find wholeness somewhere else." The floor cracked beneath him. The giant raised its massive arm. The chamber began to collapse, and beneath it all, something vastly older than memories finally began to stir. The chamber continued to collapse around them, as if the asylum itself were trying to shake off everything buried beneath it. Chunks of broken ceiling crashed to the floor. Dust thickened in the air until breathing became a battle. The massive memory giant, its body made of swirling fog and screaming faces, towered above Ethan, blocking out what little light remained. Behind him, the creature fought like a warrior of light and shadow. Its blade burned gold, slicing through the memory tendrils that hurled themselves at the fleeing group. Yet even with its strength, the fog reformed again and again, a tide of unending torment. Claire, Daniel, Lila, Victor, and Evelyn reached the blocked side door. Victor pushed his shoulder against it, groaning as metal scraped stone. Daniel joined him. Together, 1, 2, 3, they shoved. The door cracked open by inches. Not enough. Claire turned back to Ethan. He was still standing alone before the memory giant. His silhouette was swallowed by shifting fog. Lila cried out, "Ethan, hurry!" But he did not move. He could not. The memory giant leaned forward, hundreds of faces merging into one twisted expression of anguish. The voices of the lost screamed through the swirling darkness. "Return what was taken." Ethan stepped back, but the fog surged like a tidal wave, swallowing him to the waist. He felt hands cold, desperate, grabbing him from every direction, pulling him down toward the cracks in the floor. They were not trying to kill him. They were trying to claim him. The memories pressed into his mind like iron spikes. Children crying, patients screaming, doctors writing his name on endless lists. Ethan's breath faltered. His pulse slowed. He felt himself slipping. A voice whispered inside him, not from the giant, not from the abyss. A voice from the liquid figure inside him, the half that had returned. "Do not forget who you are." Ethan clenched his fists, focused, breathed. "I am Ethan Cole." The fog recoiled slightly as if stung. "I survived." The chamber walls trembled. "I escaped." The fog giant let out a howl that cracked the remaining tiles under Ethan's feet. "And I am still alive." Light burst from his chest, faint at first, then blinding. The fog around him evaporated instantly. The memory giant staggered back, its form destabilizing. Claire gasped. "What is that?" Ethan whispered. "It is me, not a fragment, not a half. Me." The fog giant's form pulsed violently. Its many mouths screamed. "You cannot exist outside the cycle." Ethan lifted his hand. "Watch me." He surged forward. Light streamed from him in waves, pushing the fog back. The giant's torso tore apart, then reformed desperately, trying to hold itself together. But something else began happening. The creature, the one that once hunted Ethan, responded to the light. Its blade ignited brighter, its movements sharper. It roared and carved an arc through the fog, cutting swaths of darkness clean away. Daniel shouted, "It is fighting with you." Victor grinned despite the chaos. Like a damn knight, the memory giant panicked. "You break the list. You break the order. You break us," Ethan yelled. "You never owned me." The fog giant struck downward with a massive arm, but Ethan sidestepped. The floor shattered beneath the weight. Another arm swung, but the creature intercepted, blocking it with its glowing blade. Ethan ran forward. Light burst around him. He leapt, landing directly on the giant's collapsing arm. The fog screamed, faces spiraled away. The giant swung again, but Ethan threw light outward like a shockwave. The blast tore through its chest. A hole opened in the center of it, large, expanding, unraveling the fog from within. Claire screamed, "Ethan, stop, it's collapsing the chamber." He looked down. The floor beneath the giant was fracturing again, deeper this time. Whatever was beneath the memory reservoir was waking faster now. The abyss had not died. It had evolved. Ethan shouted Claire, "Get everyone through the door now." She hesitated only a moment. Daniel and Victor forced the door open wide enough for Lila and Evelyn to slip through. Claire followed. Victor called back, "Ethan, move." But Ethan shook his head. "Not yet. I have to finish this." The giant lunged one last time. Ethan's light collided with its fog-like mass. They slammed into each other with a roar that shook the entire building. The fog caught fire, golden fire, and burned backward through the creature's body. The faces screaming inside finally fell silent. The giant convulsed, split, then dissolved into nothing. Silence crashed through the chamber. The creature stood beside Ethan, panting like something alive. Its blade dimmed slowly, returning to pale blue, then almost clear like glass. Victor's voice echoed through the doorway. "Ethan, it is time." Ethan nodded, but as he turned to follow them, the chamber floor gave one final, violent lurch. A single massive crack split the entire room. Through it came a sound that froze Ethan's blood. Breathing, slow, heavy, ancient. Evelyn screamed from the doorway, "Ethan, run!" The floor collapsed. Ethan jumped toward the door. The creature leapt after him. They reached the ledge just as the entire center of the chamber caved inward, falling into a pit so deep it swallowed the light. A new voice rose from the darkness, one deeper than the memory giant, older than the reservoir, and filled with endless hunger. Et Han Cole. The creature shoved Ethan toward the others. A shockwave burst from below, sending debris flying. Daniel grabbed Ethan's arm, pulling him through the doorway. As the corridor behind them collapsed, Claire slammed the heavy metal door shut. Dust stormed through the cracks. Silence followed, except for one thing, a faint vibration, rhythmic and slow, the sound of breathing under the asylum. Ethan leaned against the wall, gripping his chest, every nerve on fire. Lila knelt beside him. "Ethan, what was that? What is waking up?" Ethan swallowed, staring at the trembling floor. Not memories, not experiments, not the reservoir. Something they kept beneath everything. The original subject. Victor's face paled. "You mean the first patient they ever tried this on?" Ethan nodded weakly. "The one whose mind they could never erase. The one so powerful they buried him beneath the entire asylum." Daniel's voice shook. "And now he is waking up because you broke the list." Ethan pushed himself to his feet. "Because breaking the list freed everything they trapped, including him," Claire whispered. "Ethan, how do we stop something that existed before even the creature?" Ethan turned toward the end of the corridor where the lights flickered. "We don't stop him. We find him because he knows why all of this began, and he is coming upstairs. Right now." The corridor trembled with every breath that rose from the darkness beneath the shattered chamber. Dust drifted from the ceiling in slow, ghost-like spirals. Lights flickered in jagged pulses, struggling to stay alive as something ancient climbed toward the surface. Ethan pressed a hand to the wall, steadying himself as exhaustion, fear, and a strange clarity collided inside him. Lila whispered behind him, "Ethan, are we still in danger?" He looked back at them. Claire, Daniel, Victor, Evelyn, Lila, each face pale, shaking, exhausted, but alive. Yes, more than ever. Victor clenched his jaw, and this time it is not the creature. Not the memories, not the abyss. Ethan nodded slowly. This is the one they buried before all the others. The first subject. the one whose mind they could not erase, the one they were afraid of. Evelyn hugged her arms tightly around her chest. Then what is he now? Ethan stared into the flickering dark at the far end of the corridor. Something stepped beneath the floor, the vibrations too slow and deliberate to be mistaken for debris shifting. "Awake," he whispered, and coming, a deep rumble shook the hallway. Concrete cracked, the lights shattered overhead with sharp pops. Claire gasped and covered her ears as another pulse of energy spread through the air like a shock wave. Daniel backed up quickly. It is like the whole building is breathing with him. The creature, the one that had once hunted them, stood between Ethan and the others, blade raised, though no glow remained. It was dim, weak, but ready. Ethan stepped beside it. He could feel a strange connection to the creature, no longer forced, no longer bound by the list, but chosen. It waited for his command. Ethan placed a hand lightly on the creature's arm. Not yet. Wait. The breathing grew louder. Then the floor exploded upward. Dust and debris hurled into the corridor. A massive shape rose from the ground. A towering silhouette wrapped in darkness and flickering light. Its body was not mist, nor flesh, nor machine. It was a memory-given form, a mind so powerful it had reconstructed itself into something monstrous and human at the same time. The first subject, it stood as tall as the chamber roof, its shape barely visible through swirling shadow. And in the center of its face, two brilliant white eyes cracked open. Claire whispered, "Ethan, it is looking at you." The first subject stepped forward. The corridor walls bent outward with the pressure of its presence. Shadows clung to it like living armor. Then it spoke. Ethan Cole. The voice hit them like a concussive blast. The corridor shook violently. Lila fell to her knees. Evelyn covered her head. Victor gripped the wall with a grunt. Daniel shoved Claire behind him instinctively. Ethan stood unmoving. "I know who you are," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the terror clawing at him. "You were the first one they experimented on, the first mind they broke, the first they tried to erase." The giant leaned closer. Its breath was cold and heavy like winter wind. "They failed." Ethan nodded. "Yes, they failed, but they also created the list for you, to control you, to guide you, to chain you." The giant roared, the sound tearing through the hallway like a storm. "The list is broken." Ethan took a slow step forward. "Then you are no longer bound." The giant froze. "You are free," Ethan whispered. For the first time, the first subject did not speak. The air hummed with confusion, rage, and something like hope. But freedom had come with a cost. The giant looked at the sealed abyss behind Ethan. Cracks split across the floor. Dark pulses still rippled beneath the surface. "They are escaping. The others. The pieces. The memories." The ground convulsed. Tendrils of shadow slithered upward through the cracks like desperate fingers. Evelyn screamed, "It is starting again. The abyss is reopening." Ethan shook his head. "The abyss is dying. It is trying to cling to anything it can, including you." The giant stiffened. Ethan pointed at its chest, where faint cracks glowed with the same color as the abyss. "It is inside you," Ethan said. "Part of it. They used your mind to create the reservoir. The cycle began with you," Claire whispered in horror. then it must end with him too. The giant leaned back, letting out a sound that was neither roar nor scream, a sound of realization and agony. Ethan stepped closer. You are not the abyss. You are not the experiment. You are not the weapon they tried to make. The giant trembled. Its form flickered like a dying flame. The memory, the suffering, the pieces I hold, they are not mine. Ethan reached out, not with his hands, but with the part of himself that had merged with the liquid figure, the part of him that remembered everything, then let them go. The chamber behind the giant collapsed further. A column of shadow shot upward. The abyss screamed a sound of 10,000 dying thoughts. The giant turned toward the rising darkness. Ethan Cole, if I let go, I end, Ethan whispered softly, but with absolute conviction. You end the cycle. You end the suffering. You free them and yourself. The giant hesitated. The creature stepped beside Ethan, glowing faintly. For the first time, it knelt, bowing to Ethan and to the first subject, as if recognizing them both as parts of the same broken origin. The giant looked at Ethan a final time. Thank you. It opened its chest. Light burst outward, a blinding eruption that washed across the corridor like a sunrise made of pure memory. The cracks along its form split open. Beams of golden fire poured from the first subject's body. The abyss howled. Black tendrils shot up to reclaim their host, but the giant spread its arms wide and screamed a roar of defiance so powerful the tendrils dissolved in midair. The abyss shook, fractured, then collapsed inward like a dying star. The giant continued to burn brighter and brighter until its entire body dissolved into a brilliant explosion of light. The corridor walls shook. The floor cracked. The ceiling caved in. Ethan shouted, "Run!" They sprinted down the hallway as the asylum crumbled behind them. The creature ran beside them, shielding the group from falling debris until its limbs weakened and it fell behind, crumbling into fading fragments of light. Claire screamed for it, but Ethan pulled her onward. They burst through the main entrance of the asylum just as the building imploded behind them, collapsing into a crater consumed by golden fire and sinking darkness. Silence followed. Cold rain washed over them from the open sky. Victor gasped for air. Is it over, Ethan? Ethan stared at the smoking ruins where the first subject and the abyss had been. Yes, Ethan said softly. For the first time tonight? Yes. Lila trembled. Then what happens now? Ethan looked at the horizon where dawn finally pushed through the clouds. Now he whispered, "We live." But in the wind behind him, a faint whisper drifted, a memory not yet gone. We will meet again. The story ends here. Thank you for watching and listening to the whole story. Please subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell to listen to the next stories.